Ich setze mich erst hin, wenn es eine richtig geile Neuigkeit gibt. Ansonsten stehe ich als Protest die ganzen 2 Stunden. Also, willkommen zum Diablo Campfire Talk. Das Video ist schon bekannt. Es wird jetzt über Season 6 geredet, das Add-on, neue Skills, neue Techniken, neue, ja, alle Neuerungen, Paragon-Überarbeitung, was uns mit dem Add-on kommt und der Rest. Lassen wir uns mal überraschen, auch in Klammer mit dem PTR. Also deswegen stehender Protest, wir setzen uns erst hin, wenn richtig was Gutes kommt und wenn es dann einfach knallt.
The same level of will to fight against the demons of hell.
And there's 4 mercs that you can collect over the course of the campaign. It starts with Rahir, a blacksmith and a shield bearer, is more a defensive fighter.
He's able to go in there and soak up damage, use his shield as a bulwark.
Genau, ich bin nebenberuflich, bin ich Stuntman. Haut alle schlechten Witze raus, weil gleich gibt's dann nichts mehr zu lachen.
For 3 other mercs that you can find throughout the course of the story.
Subo, the drunken archer, is going to work really well for people who want someone who's out of the main melee, in the back, offering utility and that kind of range support.
Then we have Ariana, a berserker crone, who's a melee combat fighter, close range. She's got a really cool combat meter, a massacre meter, where you need to keep killing enemies to get the meter to be filled.
She's got a bunch of really interesting utility skills that you can kind of build in.
Finally, we have the demon child Aldkin, who's a magic user who can
Stehst du auf
transform
das
himself
Add-on?
from human form to demon form and join you in combat.
There's this really great reinforcement ability where you can take one of the mercenary skills and attach it to one of your powers so that when you use that skill, it calls them in to do a specific skill.
With the mercenaries for Vessel of Hatred, one of the things we are expanding on is the skill tree. For Diablo 3, you had a very basic type of mercenary, but this time you can actually push a little bit more into the skill tree and make the mercenary the way you would want to play.
Going through each mercenary progression arc and outfitting their skill tree so that it's complementary to your character build, I think that's where the fun in the mercenary system really lies.
The Dark Citadel is a new in-game feature that's coming in Vessel of Hatred.
Kann ich mal kurz einen Plus haben von jedem, der sich auf die Zitadelle freut? Oder sagt ihr da eher, nee, Gruppencontent interessiert mich nicht? Also Plus, wenn ihr es geil findet, oder Minus, wenn ihr sagt, nee.
Hordes within.
One of the outcomes of the Mage Wars is this giant crater and all the souls that were...
Könnt ihr bitte die Zitadelle spielen, wenn die jetzt so viel Geld in die Entwicklung stecken und 3/4 meiner Community möchte das gar nicht spielen? Hallo?
They're using the powers within the citadel found within this crater to perform experiments to try and bring back their dark god.
Only recently, people have started going missing. They head into the Kaza region, they disappear, never to be seen again. So it's clear that whatever they're planning is about to come to fruition, and your job as the players to get in there and stop it.
Citadels are a place where we take what is the best part of Diablo, combat, and we test it in a different way, which is adding in cooperative mechanics that you have to manage on top of that.
For example, a boss has an attack, and as a player, you have to collect an item that allows you to reflect the attack back at him. So there's a little bit of a Twitch level mechanic there where you actually have to time your reaction shot. What's interesting about it is when you get multiple people in there, we're each responsible for reflecting that shot once, so we all have to sort of master the timing of that move. You can't do that kind of thing without coordinating as a team, and that's sort of the example of what Citadel gameplay feels like.
When designing the Citadel, we designed a lot of really cool bosses. And so one of the things that we did is we took that design and made like armor sets for.
Das hier ist noch das Intro-Video, das gab's schon länger. Der Talk startet jetzt gleich in 1 Minute. Ja, also die Sachen könnt ihr alle jederzeit nachschauen.
To Citadel, where as you play through, a vendor can be interacted with to buy custom cosmetics that are unique to the Citadel. You can play with 2 people, but the ideal experience is for 4. In order to facilitate that, we've built an all-new Party Finder feature, and the community has been pretty vocal about wanting this for a long time. It made a...
Das ist doch der Raid Finder aus WoW. Hast ja sogar gesehen. Ja, Ring A, Ring B.
Love to play together with their friends or with strangers and enjoy that cooperative gameplay. I cannot wait for players to get into the world. I'm really just excited for...
Ich möchte das jetzt gleich hier anmerken. Ich werde in den Raid Finder reingehen und werde mich Leute suchen oder Leute aus der Community und dann werde ich mich nicht auf den Punkt stellen. Aus Protest, ne? Dann schauen wir mal, wie lange die Leute Spaß haben. 5 Minuten. So, dann überrascht uns mal. Oh.
Hello, Diablo community. Welcome to another Campfire chat. This is the patch 2.0 Campfire chat for PTR. As you guys can see, we're in a little bit of a new environment. We're all doing this from home. We had to do a quick last-minute pivot about 24 hours ago. I was struck by some con flu after Gamescom, but I just wanted to give a quick shout out to our production teams behind the scenes. Lucas, Jade, and Rich, they make
Ich sage euch, mit Adam arbeiten ist immer ein Problem.
safe. And to
Ja, wegen Corona haben sie sich aufgeteilt.
exciting information for patch 2.0. But to lead us off, I do want us to do some quick intros for everyone here on the actual panel. So Colin, would you like to start off the intros?
Yeah, sure. I'm Colin on the design team.
Hello, I'm Aislinn Hall. I'm a systems designer with a focus on live balance.
Hey everyone, I'm Charles Dunn. I'm a class designer working on the live balance for Diablo 4.
Hey everyone, I'm Jeevan Sidhu, and I also work on the systems team.
Awesome. So we got a whole panel here, way more than what we normally have because we have so much to actually cover. We do want to jump into things pretty immediately, but I did want to recap really quickly. Obviously, last week we were at Gamescom. We made some really big announcements for Vessel of Hatred, where we announced, the mercenaries that will be coming to Vessel of Hatred, along with how that system works with like reinforcements. It's like a new take of how mercenaries play within Diablo, especially since mercenaries has such a storied history within the franchise itself. And of course, we also talked about the Cuirass Undercity and the Dark Citadel, along with the Party Finder feature that players will be able to actually partake in with Vessel of Hatred and use that for Dark Citadel and other features within the game. We do actually have a blog up on Diablo4.com that does do a good deep dive across all of those specific items, so you guys can actually check that out. But we have a packed agenda today. This will be a long one, so we hope that everyone will sit down and...
Na, ich stehe noch, Adam, sagt was. Also, die gute Nachricht ist, Colin ist der Zettelguy, der ist mittendrin. Ich bin echt gespannt, was da jetzt kommt.
Sharing as well, that will also be coming with Diablo 4. So we're going to start off with some progression updates. We're going to move off into some class and balance changes, along with some quality of life updates. And then we'll kind of cap it off with a cool new announcement that will be coming with Vessel of Hatred. So Aislinn, Colin, I know you guys want to jump into some of these big progression changes that you guys were talking about last week. So take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. And I'm sure everyone has no idea what the big surprise is at the end.
None whatsoever.
So right. Let's jump into the progression. So
Jetzt bin ich gespannt.
when we launched the game, we had a sort of vision for the game that we felt like was really fun to play through once, where you'd sort of traverse through these world tiers and you'd be gaining new sacred items rarely, and then you'd be getting ancestral items when hopping into World Tier 4. And as we played the game more and more, and as we've gotten feedback, that necessarily hasn't really been super fun. So we've sped up a lot of the progression to sort of get you into that space that where you feel powerful, where you have autonomy over your choice in terms of difficulty and challenge and reward. Diablo is all about that progression, right? And sort of blasting and feeling efficient. So we wanted to take a step back after looking at itemization. We've added a ton of itemization progression that we think is feeling pretty good. There's a lot of ways to customize your character. There's a lot of ways to progress your itemization. And we wanted to look at other aspects of the game. So that came in the form of like what hasn't aged super well. What are the things that we really enjoy and we see you all enjoy? And doubling down on that. So two of those things are difficulty and overall just character progression from your Paragon to your glyphs, etc. And we've sort of taken the approach of like really doubling down and embracing again what has been really fun, right? Blasting, being efficient, having control over your challenge and reward, right? Profane Mind Cages is awesome when you can stack it to 3 and you can hop into those Hell Tides and just start getting tons of experience and reward for pushing that challenge. Key dungeons like Nightmare Dungeons, Infernal Hordes, really pretty much every endgame in the system at this point has a tiering system associated with it. And we think that's like pretty indicative of like what has been fun, and we want to embrace that. And part of that is, that idea of I can push really hard to get more efficiency. Part of that's conquering milestones, right? It's really good. It's a ton of fun to hop into World Tier 3 early. I think I hopped in at level 25 in the latest release just to see if I could do it, and it was a ton of fun. And it's sort of all about embracing that gaining power in multiple ways, feeling super powerful. And then another thing that we really wanted to look at in terms of making this better is alting. We made a change to make it so that the mythic uniques could be equipped at level 35, and if you've done that, it's a really badass experience.
Wie viel mythische Item habt ihr für eure Twinks?
Father on them, and you just blast through the leveling experience, and it's a ton of fun. That being said, we've added tons of sort of power to the equation, and we wanted to make sure that we also gave you more autonomy to sort of challenge yourself with all that new power, and we're adding a ton of new power in the expansion as well. So to cover it again, right, we want to look at expanding the progression in other areas of the game come patch 2.0. So with that, Aislinn actually has a bunch of exciting changes to talk about here.
I do. Thank you, Colin. Okay, everyone, I want you to put on your thinking caps because we have a lot of details to cover. So buckle up. We, in fact, have a topic screen here because there's so many things regarding progression that we're going to be talking about today. So the way that we're approaching this presentation is we're basically going to be bringing you through what a character's journey would actually look like. You know, starting by talking about the character journey and then talking about some difficulty tier changes that are coming, and then going deeper into, how you're going to be.
Kann ich mal ein Plus haben für jeden, der sich noch wie gerade in der Schule fühlt und das so eine Aufgabenliste für den Tag ist, für so eine Projektarbeit? Fühlt ihr euch auch so? Also heute im Projekt machen wir die Charakterentwicklung, wie level ich richtig, wir erklären euch die neuen Schwierigkeitsgrade, wie geht es da weiter und was mit dem Paragon-System passiert.
How you're going to be leveling up. There's going to be a level adjustment, first of all, coming to patch 2.0. Right now in the live game, you go from character level 1 to 50. Those are your skill point levels. And then every level after 50 is a Paragon level where you're earning 4 Paragon points per
dann geht's bis 60.
Paragon level. We're going to be splitting those out in patch 2.0. And so you're going to earn Paragon points, which are going to be separate from your character level. Levels 1 to 50 represent those character levels. And there's also going to be a new max character level, quote unquote, of level 60. And that means that you are going to be earning 10 more skill points from what you had been earning pre-patch 2.0. There's also going to be a reimagined pace to the leveling journey. So we have a lot of new difficulty tiers that are being added to the game, more on that soon. But effectively, lower difficulty tiers are going to be offering you a slower pace if you're a near player.
Ich bin so gespannt, wie viel Schwierigkeitsgrade die reinhauen.
But you're going to be able to bump it up if you want to. Like if you're, engaging with tempering, you're engaging with all these systems that are making your character stronger, and you want something to test that against, we're aiming to give that to you. And these difficulty tiers are going to be offering you improved efficiency, improved rewards, and the goal is to improve your pace if you can blast through these difficulties.
Yeah, this is a lot like the mine cages, right? Like we sort of heard, we heard you like mine cages, so we put it in the game systemically, like from whispers to Helltide to literally everything in the world. Like maybe you like doing dungeons. And really, it's sort of like giving players that choice to do what they want, and it's not just Helltide now that can push that difficulty.
Yeah, totally. Like we were just playing on the development team, and we were playing in Helltides and playing with mine cages, and we were like, "This is great! Like I want to just be able to do this, or like have this option available to me, like basically whenever I play." So that's a big part of these changes. Moving on here to the number adjustments. So as a lot of you guys found in footage, yes, there is a pretty substantial number adjustment. So a big part of this is we want to make sure that there's room for growth. And we're adding a lot of player power in patch 2.0 and Vessel of Hatred. And we want to make sure that numbers don't get so crazy that we cannot even fathom them, right? And so a big part of this is giving us a good starting point in patch 2.0 where we can afford to grow numbers.
Yeah. Aislinn, I think it's really important, to have numbers that are like, when you're like doing damage numbers to see ones that are meaningful to you, right? If you're increasing your damage like even 10x, but it's taking it from like an 8 or 9 digit number to a 10 digit number, it's almost impossible to see that kind of growth in player power. So with numbers that are more readable on screen, that
Ich möchte mal ganz kurz zusammenfassen, ich werde das öfter machen, damit das hier ein bisschen schneller und zackiger geht. Also, Levelprozess und so weiter wird umgebaut, das Paragon-System wird modifiziert, da sehen wir hoffentlich noch was dazu. Es wird neue Schwierigkeitsstufen geben und auch leichtere Schwierigkeitsstufen für eine bessere Einordnung und eine Eingliederung. Und es wird einen Number Squeeze geben, wie es im World of Warcraft ist. Das heißt, damit die Zahlen nicht unendlich skalieren, wird da einfach ein bisschen was runtergenommen. Das waren die letzten 5 Minuten.
What we set out to do when we launched the game is have more grounded numbers for longer. That's not to say that you aren't going to get insane in the deep end game, right?
Yeah, you're still going to have a lot of power to game. And yeah, finally, just going back to this first bullet here on this slide, we're going to talk more about Paragon later, but for now we're going to focus on some other things. So sit tight.
So.
Okay, let's talk about how monsters are changing. So we've streamlined monster health and damage in a pretty big way. We took a look at how monsters gain health and how they gain damage over different difficulty tiers. And we've really like honed in and kind of universalized our approach to how they're gaining power throughout your character experience. And this is going to be applying to all monster types, normal monsters, minions, which are elites' little buddies, elites themselves, and of course bosses. And all of these monsters now have health that's relative to their normal monster counterpart on any given like difficulty tier. And what this does is it really helps smooth difficulty progression and the difficulty of any experience that you're currently in. Secondly,
ich habe eine Frage. Haben die Monsterlevel nicht immer mit der Bitstufe skaliert?
A pit tier, and we're going to talk more about that as well pretty soon too. So sit tight. And the big thing here is that monsters are always going to match the player level now. So on live, we have a world where monsters can be, 100 levels offset of you and anywhere in between. And that can be fairly hard to understand. And so a big part of this pass is kind of removing that element of the game so that we can focus on what difficulty we're currently in and using that as the judge of how hard or how easy or wherever in between the content you're currently in.
Also es ist dann wie in Diablo 3. Das Qual 16 ist das Monsterlevel 100 und tötet mich und in Qual 12 tötet es mich nicht. Also schreibe auf die Folie wie Diablo 3. Punkt.
And monster mechanics across the board have been adjusted to really hone in on player momentum. You're here to slaughter demons. We want you to move quickly through the game. And we don't necessarily want monsters to be slowing you down, especially normal monsters. And to achieve this, we've reduced instances of getting one shot like out of nowhere. And we've also adjusted boss HP. So that they're not quite as grindy after you're moving in from, after blasting down AoE packs in the pit, for example.
Oder für den Wirbelwindbar.
Yeah, it was definitely a pain point. Oh, great call.
Go ahead, Charles.
Just saying, right, that's always been the pain point in the pit so far is like, hey, you're really strong, you blast through most of the dungeon, and then you get up to the boss, and the boss takes, 5 minutes or more. That's just like such a slog. So we're definitely making sure it's a more consistent experience. In a given difficulty tier, you're going to have a more consistent experience across boss and other portions of the game.
Yeah, and we've already taken a lot of steps towards this. In one of the previous seasons, we set it so that you wouldn't get armor cap penalties as the monsters leveled higher than you, right? So this is really just sort of consolidating a lot of the, I'm going to get shit for the Blizzard math, on the back end to make sure that like a lot of the things are really being reworked on the back end to address the problems we see on live with the crazy exponential scale.
Vielleicht ganz kurz, weil ich jetzt gelesen habe, du kannst dann die Leute immer noch boosten, aber nicht über den Level Gap, sondern über den Schwierigkeitsgrad Gap. Na, wie in Diablo 3. Wenn du wen in Qual 16 einlädst, fährt er viel mehr XP wie bei Qual 1. Und genauso machen es jetzt in D4 das.
Presentation.
Yes. Very soon, in fact.
Oh,
Like
jetzt
right
wird's
now.
spannend. Jetzt wird's
Difficulty
spannend.
Right now.
Let's talk about it. So this is our beautiful Blizzard illustration, if you will, of
Art by
current day
Colin.
difficulty. Art by
Gotta-
Colin.
gotta-
Thank you very much.
Gotta call out Colin. Yeah.
Die klauen meine Paint-Grafik. Ja, dann könnt ihr mich ja gleich einstellen, frech.
Yeah, this
This
is
is beautiful.
Modern art. Yeah, you can see we have the big bone boss. Very, very sad at the current state of things up there. So what this is basically illustrating is that there are basically brackets right now on live where various content is relevant. You have world bosses that stay relevant for a certain amount of time. You have Helltide that stays relevant, maybe a little bit longer than world bosses do. And then you have world tiers 1 and 2. Then you have world tier 3, which is, very sad. Sorry, world tier 3.
Yeah.
And then
Pull
world
out
tier
a
4.
magnifying glass, you can see it.
Yeah. Maybe if you look really closely, you can see how long it takes to go through World Tier 3. And then World Tier 4, which has like a bit of a tail, but still pretty short. And then we compare it to like where our character's power currently exists, which is, you've got level 1 to 100, and then of course your journey throughout all of the pit tiers. And basically what this is illustrating is a lot of these content types fall off. World bosses don't stay relevant forever. Helltide doesn't stay relevant forever. The world tiers you're living on in the open world don't stay relevant. And eventually it simply becomes about running the pit. And that's the place where you can judge your character's strength. We don't necessarily want the game to work that way. We want a lot of activities to stay fun and interesting and engaging for as long as possible.
Ganz kurz, für die Grafik hat Blizzard nicht gezahlt, aber für die nächste, die kommt, da haben sie mich richtig gut bezahlt. Die Folie jetzt.
So let's dive into the meat and potatoes of this, talking about pit arbitration. And that's just a fancy way of basically saying that the pit is going to be something behind the scenes that's setting the pace of all difficulty in the game across all content types.
Da steht echt Torment 1,
So
2,
pit
3,
tiers are going to
4.
match difficulty tiers. There's going to be 5 pit tiers per.
Meine Damen und Herren, notiert den Tag, an dem ihr 29.08., wo Torment in Diablo 4 kommt. Diablo 3 übernimmt. Diablo 3 übernimmt Diablo 4. Alles safe. Endlich bringen meine 18.000 Stunden Spielerfahrung was.
Are going to derive monster health, damage, and intensity from the pit tier that is associated with that difficulty tier. And I know that's a little complicated, but we're going to have some supporting stuff to show what this means a little better pretty soon. And I do want to call out intensity here. Colin, do you want to talk about monster intensity raising between difficulty tiers?
Yeah, so intensity is something we played around with in the base game, and it's sprinkled out throughout the game. But what intensity is it's a backend system that controls monster aggressiveness as well as monster intelligence. So by aggressiveness, it's things like they attack faster, they have lower cooldowns, they move faster. And then intelligence is they predict your movement more, they'll face you more. So if it has a big swing, it's actually going to try and track you a little bit more accurately. So it's not just the health and damage that's going up through these difficulty tiers. The monsters are actually becoming a little bit more dynamic and fast-paced. And we think that
Soll das heißen, in den Lower Tier Level ist das Spielen langsamer, weil die Monster zu dumm sind, um mich mit einem Pfeil und so zu treffen? Habe ich das jetzt richtig verstanden? Oder mit einem Schwinger?
Patch 2.0, you're really going to feel that difference. Currently, you feel a little bit of difference in between the different world tiers, and that's just going to be magnified. And your moment-to-moment combat it's not just going to be higher numbers. The moment-to-moment will feel different and harder at these higher torment difficulties.
Das kannst du nicht bringen, ey.
Yep, they're going to become bigger jerks.
Das reicht doch, wenn sie
As you
weniger
said,
Leben
difficulties.
haben, um es leichter zu machen.
All right, so let's talk about difficulty gating. So this is basically how people are going to be moving through these different difficulty tiers. So the pit is going to unlock once you hit character level 60, which is the new maximum character level in patch 2.0. So pit tiers associated with standard difficulties are going to unlock immediately, which is pit tiers 1 through 20. you're going to be able to challenge all of those immediately once you're max level. And you're going to need to beat Pit Tier 20 to unlock the first Torment tier. Once you beat Pit Tier 20, you're allowed to go into the overworld on Torment
freischalten.
1.
Okay.
And then, as we see,
Vielleicht mal ganz kurz, also die Schwierigkeitsstufen müsst ihr freischalten über die Pit. Und wenn ihr die Pit-Stufe geschafft habt, ist dann Torment frei und da könnt ihr rein. Und wie sie jetzt gerade gesagt hat, der Unterschied zwischen den Schwierigkeitsstufen ist nicht nur, dass die Gegner mehr Damage und mehr Leben haben, sondern sie sind schlauer. Das heißt, sie treffen dich genauer, sie sind schneller und. Und das finde ich ein bisschen schwierig, den Ansatz.
Is World Tier 3 today. And what we're sort of doing is essentially saying, now that level cap is 60, you actually can find some of the best items in the game very early, right? Imagine if you were able to just start finding the best items in the game in World Tier 3. That's really sort of what we're talking about here. We're really speeding up when you can actually get to the end game, where we've added things like the pit, we've added things like nightmare dungeons and more endgame activities.
Ich sage euch den Clip. Auf der niedrigen Stufe, wenn du einen Disconnect hast, wie der Gegner dasteht und dich 37 Mal mit seinem Schwert verfehlt. Das ist mein Spirit.
Alright, I'm in the end game. I'm going to start looking for awesome
Alter, das
items.
ist echt
I'm going to start
mein Spirit.
modifying my items. So we think that like sort of represents a pretty substantial change to how you play the game.
Ich bin gespannt, wie das am PTR sich
yeah,
I was
spielt.
wondering why we kind of built it around the pit, you know, and why we associated difficulty with the pit. How do y'all think about that?
yeah, so right now the pit is a fantastic razor to judge your character against. And I think that this overhaul is effectively turning the pit into the game's backbone, to use kind of a gruesome term, but you know, we're Diablo, so whatever. It's basically turning the pit into the game's backbone of like difficulty. And all other difficulties is kind of derived from that. And it gives us a very predictable and understandable pace for you to experience all other activities in the game based on the pit's difficulty.
Yeah, and that razor is great for pushing difficulty, right? You think about how part of what's really fun, again, about Diablo is that feeling of progression and that feeling of becoming powerful, then taking on a big-ass demon, killing it, getting awesome loot. And what the pit is going to do is you're going to push that difficulty, then unlock new torment tiers, which is going to unlock more efficiency for you. And
Right.
you can sort of think about it as like we've added not just a World Tier 5, but a World Tier 5 and 6 as part of this torment system. And it's something we can continue to sort of evaluate and build on as characters become more powerful and we add new ways to sort of play through the system.
Yeah, and I think it's also a lot about consistency across content, right? Currently, in the live game, we've got a lot of different, levels of different types of things, right? You've got Nightmare Dungeon keys, you've got pit levels, you've got Infernal Horde tiers, and we just kind of realized that, hey, the pit is something that we have, really good delineation between the different levels. So you've got a wide spread of different tiers for that, and that's something we can kind of peg difficulty against across the whole game to make a more consistent experience. When you're in a certain difficulty tier, you're just going to get a more consistent experience across all activities.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like when you're on Torment 2, you're going to know that all the content you're facing is on the level of Torment 2. But right now on the live game, you go into a pit tier 50 and you're like, okay, it's pit tier 50 difficulty. And then you go into a Nightmare Dungeon tier 50 and it's a totally different difficulty. And then you go in.
Das ist vielleicht gar keine schlechte Idee, den Schwierigkeitsgrad global auf eine Stufe zu setzen, wie es Diablo 3 getan hat. Das heißt, wir haben jetzt 1,5 Jahre gewartet, um die Systeme von Diablo 3 zu nutzen, weil es einfach dort 13 Jahre funktioniert hat.
Experience for everyone.
Das hat uns nur $1 Milliarde gekostet. Ist das ein politisches Ding, Diablo? Haben das Politiker entwickelt?
I know that there's some people who really enjoy Whispers, for example, and Whispers just falls off. Like, if you're doing the pit and you're level 100, you're level 90 in the pit.
Das ist mein Spirit, ey.
Like, Whispers are terrible, right? Like, you're not actually gonna...
Aber dann sind ja Whispers und Helltide 100-mal schwerer.
With torment tiers, you have a place to go and sort of
ja mega
choose the efficiency from those different activities, if you like that activity.
Yeah, and this kind of carries over to other activities, not just Whispers. It's like, your Helltides.
Yeah,
too.
the whole
Infernal
world is
Hordes.
leveling, right?
Yeah, and like which is another thing. Like Infernal Hordes is something that obviously was introduced in season 5, is coming back and is a permanent feature within the game, and is also going up with the rest of the content.
Yep. All right. So let's talk a little more about the details of
1, 2,
difficulty
3,
tiers.
4, 5, 6,
So on the
7,
right-hand
8
side here, you can see this
Schwierigkeitsgrade.
table. It's basically showing off the associated pit tier with any given difficulty tier. So normal simply starts on 1, and then like we saw before, it goes up by 5 each time until you get to...
Wisst ihr, was das einzig wirklich Schwere an Diablo 4 ist? Wer weiß, was das einzig wirklich Schwere an Diablo 4 ist? Zu verstehen, was sich die Entwickler denken. Zu verstehen, welchen Gedanken Blizzard verfolgt. Das ist wirklich das einzig Wahre und Schwierige an Diablo.
100. And this doesn't mean that the pit tier 100 is going to be the same difficulty as it is on live. It's going to be harder. So each pit tier you're going up is going to be harder than it was before, effectively. And we also have this pretty neat new system where we have smart keys. And what that means is your things like Infernal Hordes or Nightmare Dungeons. The keys to enter those activities are now going to follow the current difficulty tier that you're on. So if I have an Infernal Horde key and I'm on Torment 3 and I use it, I'm going to go into a Torment 3 difficulty Infernal Horde. And the same is true for Nightmare Dungeons. So we're pretty excited about that change because, again, you know, coming back to all these things we've talked about, where it just kind of makes things easier, just makes life easier.
Yeah, it's a big quality of life change because on live right now you get a bunch of sacred, Nightmare Dungeons.
Also, weil ich das jetzt schon im Chat gelesen habe vorab, ich weiß, dass jetzt viele von euch verwirrt sind, aber unterm Strich ist das viel bessere System. Und warum ist es das bessere System? Weil es in Diablo 3 auch funktioniert hat. Und in den nächsten Add-on werden sie einfach Schwierigkeitsgrade hinzu-adden.
Nightmare Key is this interesting choice of like, well, do I keep...
Also es gibt ein Sternchen für den Versuch, Diablo 4 anders gestaltet zu haben. Der Versuch ist gescheitert. Back zu den Bewerten.
Want to run this content, we're not just going to invalidate that key and say, oh, in Torment 2, you need to find a new key to do this thing. So I think it's definitely making key management a lot easier and more fluid as well. One thing on the pit, Hazelin, that I think is really interesting is we definitely have rescaled the pit.
Diablo 3 ist voll Banane. Hier, Nuka, ich möchte dich bitten, den Chat zu verlassen. Diablo 3 ist das beste Spiel, was es jemals gegeben hat.
We don't have any problems with increasing the amount of pit tiers. Like this is something we can definitely revisit if we see in PTR that you all are insane, which is probably going to happen and you beat tier 100. We really like that it's a razor and measuring stick and we don't want to take that away from players. So that's something that we want to get PTR feedback and we could really use your help in breaking that system and seeing how far you can push it.
Ich habe auch gesehen, weil die Leute gesagt haben, Bit 65 ist ja voll der Joke. Das ist eine neue Schwierigkeitsgrad mit einer anderen Skalierung. Das kannst du jetzt nicht gleichsetzen mit dem, was du jetzt gespielt hast. Also alles, was ihr jetzt aus Diablo 4 kennt, alle Schwierigkeitsgeschichten, kannst du alles in die Tonne treten. Die Frage ist, wie die Überbosse werden auf Torment 4 oder Torment 5.
Into the details. I think we went over a lot of this stuff already, but we can kind of go through this slide here. Yeah, all content in the game exists within an expanded difficulty tier selection, like we were talking about. I think an important thing to call out here is that, for example, Penitent is, if you're comparing it just to like kind of understand what it's going to look like relative to live right now, Penitent's kind of going to end up being like World Tier 2 if you added 45 monster levels on top of it. And that's intended to kind of be the upper echelon of like pre-max level character leveling. So if you really want to amp up the difficulty to as hard as you can make it, like going on to Penitent is where you want to be.
Das sieht doch aus wie Diablo 3. Bindet uns doch keinen Bären auf. Ich möchte mich an dieser Stelle bedanken, dass das Diablo 3 Team komplett von Diablo 4 übernommen wurde. Ja, danke, dass der Arbeitsplatz für die alten Diablo 3 Teamleute gesichert ist.
Okay, so yeah, and we really want this to be like opt-in, not progression locked. And so the vanilla Diablo 4 difficulty tiers kind of operated as progression tiers, right? And what I mean by progression tiers is the moment you get to World Tier 3, as Colin was saying, like you unlock sacred items, maybe you go into a dungeon so you can find a sacred weapon. And these things unlock so quickly and they drop so frequently that you kind of just got this huge burst of power, and you never really got to feel that power. And we want to make sure that you are like feeling each upgrade you get in the game, and it feels really, really punchy. And we really want these new difficulty tiers to be player guided. Like, we want you to be able to make your own decisions on when you're moving on to the next one and what's the right pace for you. And of course, these new difficulty tiers are going to give you improving rewards. You're going to find more gold, more experience, and you're going to have more loot efficiency per difficulty tier. So the higher difficulty tier you can fight the game on, the more efficient your experience is going to be effectively.
Yeah, and I think that's really...
Go ahead, Charles.
Go ahead, Kyle. Yeah, I was just saying that's really like what I view as the differentiating factor between, you know, what current V4 is and in the new patch 2.0 is if you enter Torment 1, you can find the best item in Torment 1. You could complete your character and get full best in slot and everything. It's just going to take a while, right? It's going to be less efficient. You're going to be getting less loot. And whereas in the live game right now, right, you just can't find the best things in World Tier 3. You are kind of obligated to go to that World Tier 4. And now, if you're able to clear higher torments with efficiency, that's just going to be the best option for you to find the gear more efficiently, but you aren't forced into Torment 4 to find the best items in the game.
Soll das jetzt heißen, die haben auch von Diablo 3 das System übernommen, überall kann alles droppen? Und das ist einfach nur mehr random, also Masse statt Klasse. Also die haben nicht nur die Schwierigkeitsgrade von Diablo 3 genommen, sondern haben auch das Loot-System über... Ja Gott, Diablo 3 back! Meine Damen und Herren, willkommen zum Diablo 3 Comeback-Stream. 2 Jahre gewartet, jetzt sind wir wieder da, wo wir am Anfang waren. Nice!
Like a great example of that
das finde ich gut.
What we're doing with the ladder bosses, or the lair bosses. All of those unlock in Torment 1. The cost to summon them is static. It remains the same throughout all the Torment tiers. And what that means is if you can beat it on a higher Torment tier, you're going to get way more uniques. So you get a handful of uniques starting in Torment 1, way more uniques in obviously Torment 4, but the cost, because it remains static, we're not going to ask you to get anything extra like a Stygian Stone. That just means as long as you can kill that Torment 4 boss, you're getting way more efficiency out of that boss. I mean, it really is like this... It feels amazing to sort of progress through those Torment tiers and just unlock way more power opportunity.
Yeah, we don't really have this differentiation of
so
like
gut,
a regular version of the late game boss, like a regular version of Duriel, and then the tormented echo of Duriel.
Kann ich mal kurz einen Plus haben für alle, die Diablo 3 mögen? Mögt ihr Diablo 3? Ihr werdet es mögen.
To summon the tormented version, but it would give more rewards.
Es ist mein
Now
Spirit,
it's the same cost across the...
Ich finde das gut, ja. Schwierigkeitsgrade wie Diablo 3, Loot wie Diablo 3, ja. Ich habe jetzt nämlich in letzter Zeit viele Kommentare gekriegt, so, hey Jesse, du hast gar keine Ahnung von Diablo 4, du spielst viel zu wenig und. Ja, aber wir spielen jetzt wieder Diablo 3, meine Damen und Herren. Die Grüße gehen raus an alle anderen Content Creator, ihr seid jetzt auf meinem Grün. Ihr seid jetzt auf meinem Grün, Freunde.
You know, more fun. Because you're going to be getting cooler stuff, or more frequently.
Oh, jetzt Itemization auch nochmal?
So enough about difficulty tiers. Let's move on to some itemization changes. So, item strength. We have what I like to call the item power shuffle happening in patch 2.0. Items with item power above 540 are going to be adjusted to 540. And affix bands in lieu of this, or in addition to this rather, are going to be adjusted as well. So yeah, items at the new character level max are they're gonna max out at 750. And that's not actually the highest item power that's going to be in the game, and we'll talk about that
Item
more in just a second.
Yeah. Item squeeze.
But most items you're going to be finding once you hit max character level will be item power 750. And you're going to be finding much better item power items from levels 51 to 59. There's going to be big item power jumps. So once you start leveling your character past those original 50 character levels, you're going to start finding a lot better gear. Okay, so let's take a look at what an ancestral item looks like in patch 2.0. Oh.
Hier gibt es eine Zusammenfassung für alle, die es bis jetzt...
Let's take a look here real quick. So
Für die es verpasst
You'll
haben.
notice here that this item has 800 item power, which is 50 higher than the max 750 that I was talking about before. You'll also notice on the right-hand side that that is the Torment icon. So ancestral items can be found starting on Torment 1. They're going to become more frequent as you ascend Torment difficulties, but they're still going to stay pretty rare throughout all Torment levels. You'll also notice that the greater affix on this item is highlighted. That is because now whenever you find an ancestral item, they're always going to have one greater affix.
Wow.
They can roll with more, but they
What
will be
the fuck?
guaranteed a single
Okay.
one every single time.
Das finde ich gut, weil dann lohnt sich's wenigstens,
So
wenn du
let's
es
dive
findest.
in more into the
Great
details.
about that, right? Aislinn is part of
Yeah,
like
yeah.
finding a greater affix on live right now is sometimes it's on life per second. It's like, oh, okay. Got a greater affix on life per second. But now when you see an ancestral item, it's always going to have a greater affix. And that ancestral eye power bump, the affix bump, is going to feel really good. Even if you miss that affix, it's still a huge upgrade to your character if you haven't found one of these before.
Yeah,
Totally.
and sometimes, right, you get an item that has multiple greater affixes on live, and it's it's not at 925, it's not at the highest item power, and that's kind of a mixed bag, right? Like, well, it's kind of good, but it's a lower item power, and now things with greater affixes will be definitionally at that highest item power.
Yes.
Hier vielleicht nochmal ganz kurz, wenn ihr später rein seid oder wenn ihr nicht ganz folgen könnt. Wir haben wieder eine Live-Übersetzung laufen. Einmal draufklicken, da wird alles hier übersetzt. Weil es ist nämlich nicht durchsichtig. Es ist sehr verwirrend teilweise, damit ihr dem folgen könnt.
You are in Torment tiers. So yeah, starting in Torment 1, they're going to start to drop. As I said, they're going to become more common as you go up, but again, they're going to stay fairly rare. They're never going to, be like the only thing that's dropping. Ancestral items are intended to be where you're finding forever items. So when you find like a really good ancestral weapon or, of whatever slot that you may not have an ancestral item for,
Wisst ihr,
that's
warum
going to be
die
a big moment. That's
runterskaliert
going to be an
werden?
exciting moment where you're going to get something a lot better. Because they also have their own affix band as well. So these ancestral items are going to have better affixes than their non-ancestral counterparts too. Something to note is that greater affixes only drop on ancestral items. You're not going to be finding greater affixes on non-ancestrals. So when you
Genau,
see
für
a
die
greater
neuen Stufen,
affix drop on the ground, you're going to know that that is an ancestral item. Ancestral items also have 2 tempering slots, up from 1 on non-ancestrals, and they're masterworkable up to 12, whereas non-ancestrals are masterworkable up to 4. And finally, they are going to have higher aspect ranks too. So you're going to find legendary aspects that become better on ancestral items.
And Charles, we actually added a ton of power to legendary aspects to accommodate this. We didn't just sort of readjust where those power bands are coming from.
Yeah, all of the legendary aspects that now scale a little bit further into the ancestral tier, we basically just tacked on 5 new levels kind of on top of the current value. So you're just going to find even more powerful legendary effects than you have currently in the new ancestral tier.
It's going to be a lot of fun to find those.
Paragon, jetzt wird spannend.
Okay.
Meine Damen und Herren, zieht die
Whew,
Hosen
let's
hoch.
move on to Paragon.
Ja, merken wir uns.
So we have some pretty big glyph updates coming with patch 2.0.
Jetzt
There's been a
brennt's.
significant rework to how many ranks you can earn on any given glyph, from 21 to 100.
Wer will denn 100 Glyphen XP farmen? 100?
Still texture in that system, right? And so
Ich muss
because of
mich
that,
hinsetzen,
we
das ist zu
also
viel.
have a new a new glyph rarity, legendary. So once you upgrade a glyph to rank 46, it becomes a legendary glyph, which you can see here on the right. This spirit glyph is level 50, so it's past that 46 mark. It's legendary. You're going to get a glyph radius increase at rank 15, which is already in the live game, but you're also going to get another radius increase at rank 46 when it becomes legendary. And this is making them bigger than they could have been previously. So you're going to get more space with your glyphs because of this. And when a glyph becomes legendary, it also unlocks a significant bonus, more so than it did before. And you can see that on the bottom of this glyph here. It's got the legendary bonus, increases critical strike damage by 21.6%. And And it's very important to note that this is a multiplicative bonus. This 21.6% is not an additive bonus. So you're going to be getting a lot of power from that bonus there. Something else I want to bring up is that glyphs are moving to the pit. So you're going to be upgrading your glyphs in the pit.
Das heißt, du musst Pit spielen, um die Schwierigkeitsstufen freizuschalten. Du musst Pit spielen, um die Glyphe zu leveln. Und die Glyphen haben jetzt Qualitätsstufen. Und wenn die Glyphe dann bei 15 oder dann 64 ist, wird sie episch und erweitert sich.
And increase their ranks. And if you are in a pit that is 10 tiers higher than your current.
Hört ihr das auch im Hintergrund? Hört ihr das? Ich glaube, Diablo 3 klopft an.
You're in.
Los, lacht, der Witz war gut.
Current glyph that you're trying to upgrade. You're going to get bonus ranks so that you can accelerate the process.
Ja, ist für mich fein. Ich mag Diablo 3.
Yeah, I think this is a really important note because you could easily look at the rank 100 and be like, oh my god, the grind is even longer. But based on how that upgrade chance works, it's guaranteed as long as you're beating pit tiers that are higher than your glyph. And then how that bonus math ends up playing out is if you're beating, for example, a pit tier 30, that's roughly somewhere between today's World Tier 3 and 4. You can upgrade a glyph from 1 to 15 in 3 runs. So you think about the difference between today's game and patch 2.0, you're getting those glyphs leveled way faster
Ich finde das gut.
if you're pushing that difficulty. And what we really wanted to do here was we've heard a ton of feedback around how the XP system for Nightmare Dungeons feels really grindy. It also just doesn't serve the Nightmare Dungeons very well, right? It's like, how do I get to the end as fast as possible, but nothing in the dungeon matters, right? And that what that does is in the pit, it's all about speed and efficiency, and it sort of embraces that. And we think that that's just really going to accelerate your pit glyph upgrading speed.
Also jetzt mal ohne Schmäh, ne? Ich musste mich jetzt hinsetzen, weil das war zu viel. Aber ohne Witz. Das macht doch einen riesigen Step Richtung Diablo 3. Schwierigkeitsgrade gleich wie in Diablo 3, Loot-System gleich wie in Diablo 3 und die Glyphen gleich wie die Gems in Diablo 3. Ist doch ein riesiger Schritt in die 3. Genau so. Jetzt ist nur die Frage, ob die 9 Stunden, die ich in Diablo 4 spiele, ob ich die auf mein Diablo 3 Konto aufschreiben kann.
Just terrible to not get literally anything from that run. So again, to be clear, it's a 100% chance as long as you're pushing difficulty. We think that this fits the concept.
Naja, die Bit ist der Greater Rift. Weil die Bit ist genau das, was der Greater Rift ist.
To push difficulty, you know, you sort of just want to hone in on like 90 or 101, depending on where you're at in terms of your progression journey on live. This system really encourages you to push and gives you a tangible reward every single time you do it.
Yeah, and I think it's important that there's the consistency of like the communication between, right? So, hey, my glyphs are currently level 50. Well, what kind of pit tier should I be approaching to upgrade these? Well, somewhere in the range of 50 to 60, right? You just a little bit higher so that you can keep pushing that harder content. And also, if you have a glyph down at level 1, because maybe you haven't paid attention to that glyph, it's going to level up much faster if you are already proven yourself, proven that you can hang in pit tier 50, for instance. You're going to level those up very quickly.
I think what's also cool is if you have a build that you feel isn't...
Stimmt. Wisst ihr, was noch fehlt? Es fehlt noch die Rüstkammer und Kanais Würfel. Wenn sie noch Kanais Würfel bringen, Goblin-Level, Kanais Würfel.
To level those up. So here we have a video basically just showing off what the new UI looks like for upgrading a glyph in patch 2.0.
46.
So you can see that it's showing you the current pit level you're on, the current success chance to get a rank up, and something...
Es hat eine Prozentchance.
You are... Oh, yes, right. So this is rank 45 to 46 explicitly, which is the moment where you are increasing a glyph from rare to legendary. And something important to note about that is that it does cost a fairly significant amount of gem fragments as well, but it's giving you that increased radius size and the new multiplicative legendary bonus, which is pretty sick. And here we have an example of showing...
Es ist genau das gleiche, nur eins größer. Junge, kündigt das Paint-Team. Ohne Witz, Freunde, kündigt bitte das Paint-Team. Das kannst du nicht als kreativ verkaufen. Jetzt mal ohne Witz, ja? Ich meine, ich bin für einen guten Lacher immer zu haben, aber mal ganz ehrlich. Kann man wer bei Rob drüben im Chat fragen, wie er das findet? Ja?
We have realm partitioning for Paragon now, and this is kind of getting into alting that Colin was talking about. We have realm-based Paragon points now. So your Paragon points are going to be shared across an entire realm. And remember that what a realm is like either seasonal softcore or seasonal hardcore or the same for Eternal.
Paragon.
Those are realms. And these Paragon points are going to stay latent on a pre-level 60 character. And what that means is that, you know, if you have, let's say, 150 Paragon
Wisst ihr, warum es 300 Paragon-Punkte sind? Weil Diablo 3.
Inactive on any character that's pre-level 60.
Smarter
But
move.
once you hit level 60 on that character, they will have those 150 Paragon points. And it's also important to note that any Paragon points you earn on any of your characters in that realm are going to be shared among all characters in that realm. So if you earn 25 or 50 Paragon points on one character and then hop over to your alt, you're going to have 25.
Das Paragon-System auch noch von Diablo 3 geklaut, gilt für alle Klassen. Ich liebe es. Ich liebe alles an dem Talk. Ich liebe einfach alles.
So right now the current max besides Renown and Altar of Lilith bonuses.
Das heißt, ich muss jetzt nur mein Diablo 3 updaten und kann Diablo 4 ins deinstallieren. Nice.
You a lot more
ich bin dabei.
Levels to chase
ich bin
throughout
dabei.
any given
nice.
season. Okay, and in light of these changes coming to Paragon, we've made some adjustments to the way that boards work as well. So because we're offering so much more power with legendary glyphs and they mean so much more to your build, you know, we're looking to set a maximum for the number of Paragon boards that you can equip at any.
Wenn Season 6 Thema Kanais-Würfel ist, verschenke ich hier 200 Subs. Ohne Witz, wenn Kanais-Würfel das Season 6 Thema wird, gibt es hier 200 Subs. Das ist mir die... Was kostet aktuell ein Sub? Ist es mir wert?
Glyph slot.
Fuck, das sind 1000 Euro. Huh.
Legendary nodes and
bitte hab was anderes. Hab was anderes.
Cool legendary
hab was anderes.
And really think about those choices instead of gunning for like every single glyph, for example.
Bitte hab was anderes.
I was just going to say this really helps complement the additional 100 more levels. Like we've heard a lot of feedback that it feels really flat once you hit 100, that there's just no more progression. You don't really need to kill any of the monsters anymore unless it's explicitly to get...
Die Rechnung schicke ich an Blizzard weiter.
And that kind of feels bad, right? Like I'm walking through this dungeon and like I get literally nothing out of killing these monsters. So with the board limit, we've packed a ton of power with additional Paragon levels to grind, a ton of power with the legendary glyphs, but it also creates a situation where once you've achieved all those different things, you don't feel so bad necessarily around not getting to that Paragon level 300. At a certain point, you start to really just sort of really need to hone in on your build, and those extra Paragon points are going to start providing you more of a show of sort of how badass you are, and give you incremental progress that's a little bit less sort of demanding that you must grind through all of this content to unlock every part of your Paragon board.
Yeah, and something I'm pretty excited about this is that, you know, sometimes on live it can feel like my goal is to get a new Paragon board, and as soon as I achieve that, my goal is to get a new Paragon board and get off the one I just unlocked. And I think this change really lets me kind of explore the boards and think about what specific route optimizations I want to take, and it lets me personalize that a little more, which I'm a pretty big fan of.
Well, I know we have we just went through a ton of content right here with
Danke, Lamo.
Progression to Paragon to itemization. I know it was a lot for people to hear. We will actually have a blog immediately up after the stream that will kind of also explain a little bit more of this to players so that they can actually get a understanding in their own cadence of like what is going to be changing with patch 2.0 for Diablo 4 in regards to some of the progression items. I know, Colin, we're seeing a lot in chat of like, you know, people are noting like, hey, this feels a little D3-ish in ways. I don't know if you wanted to chat or like comment on that a little bit more.
Yeah.
A little bit?
It's definitely familiar, right? So we thought a lot about like what is the right way to address the player feedback of we've gotten a bunch of feedback around like world tier 5, world tier 6, world tier 7, right? I want to be able to level up the challenge in the game. I want to be able to get more efficiency. And we wanted to do it in a way that was leaning into what we saw you all were really resonating with, which is getting to the end game faster. And we felt like, okay, well, we could add a world tier 5 and add ancestral, uber ancestral, and increase the level cap. But that would mean you would just need to grind more to get to that point where you're finding your forever items, doing item modification. And we could add a world tier 6, uber ancestral, right? And it just sort of made us reevaluate what is important. And it's what's important to us is getting people into the end game, getting people finding their forever.
Zu sagen, dass die Änderungen in Diablo 4 ein bisschen wie Diablo 3 sind, ja, ist das gleiche zu sagen wie in Deutschland, dass die Deutsche Bahn ein bisschen zu spät ist. Ich glaube, das ist eine ganz gute Analogie für die Leute, die ein bisschen später eingeschalten haben. Ansonsten für alle anderen gilt, hier gibt es eine Zusammenfassung, da könnt ihr das bisher Verpasste nachlesen. Es ist kaum zu glauben.
Scheme, you can really push difficulty tiers early. If you've played D3, hard is really the only real difficulty, right? But because we have so many different ways to grow your power, we think that represents a pretty fun challenge of like, how do I take all these pieces and really push as early as I can to get to that map?
Für Diablo 3 fehlt noch Kanais Würfel und Sets. Wenn noch Kanais Würfel und Sets reinkommen, dann hast du Diablo 3.
Enormous. We don't expect you to sort of play it like today's D3, where you essentially log in, get your Hadrig set, and hop right into Torment 16. The jumps are actually pretty enormous between Torment 1 and 2, and it creates this really fun like progression through those Torment tiers, and it feels like a meaningful step forward when you get into Torment 2 and then a Torment 3. We're hoping this doesn't necessarily feel like a 2-hour sort of journey through the Torment tiers, and then now you're in Torment 4, and that's how you play the rest of the game.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and also one thing I'll add is, shouts to Twitch chat, everything that you say, hey, you like what we're doing, big dub. We appreciate it. Much love for the response. Also, all the people in Twitch chat who are like, I don't like this. This isn't working for me. Much appreciation the same. We're looking at what you're saying, we're thinking about it, and we're going to try to incorporate it and make the game better. And I think
Ich musste mal kurz nachschauen, welchen Twitch-Chat der Mann liest. Vielleicht gibt es einen eigenen Blizzard-Twitch-Chat.
Do the thing that the players felt like was working for them than anything else, right? The fact that we've done it before in any form,
Scheiße, ich werde echt
to
gut
me, wouldn't
unterhalten
stop
hier.
us from doing the right thing. You know what I mean?
Danke, Glitzer, für den Resub.
Yeah, and I think
Also, gleich mal ein Follow droppen oder ein Sub, wenn ihr genauso gut unterhalten werdet wie ich, weil damit hat heute keiner gerechnet, dass wir Diablo 3 2.0 kriegen.
I was like, it's like a Zoom call, but interrupting.
Finde ich mega geil. Mega.
And also, big shout out to Twitch chat for calling out Jeevan's cord management. I've seen that message a few times already. But so thanks, Aislinn. Thank you, Colin. I know Colin's going to be joining us more on a couple other topics, but we still have a lot to talk about in this stream. And the next thing that we do want to talk about is class changes and everything. And so Charles will be taking us through all the class changes for patch 2.0.
Yeah, awesome. So before we get into some of the slides and details, I just wanted to thank Colin and Aislinn for talking about all the systemic updates that are coming, how we're going to test your character and how you're going to progress through it. But my topic is going to be a bit more about how, what are the exact abilities and skills and new legendary effects and uniques that you're gonna get to take on these awesome challenges that are set up through the difficulty tier system. And also a slight disclaimer, PTR is a very early build for whatever is going to go live on patch 2.0, and some of the assets that we've captured here are also still early on, and so some of the exact numbers or some of the wording may slightly be changed. So
Seid gewarnt, dass der PTR wieder nur die Hälfte enthält.
For the exact detail.
Influencer hassen diesen Trick. Oder besser gesagt, Diablo-Streamer.
Subject to change before we actually launch patch 2.0 live. All right, so with that out of the way, let's start talking about some of the tempering changes that are going to come in patch 2.0. So tempering is a system that we introduced back in Season of Loot Reborn, Season 4, that gave you a way to really customize your items and kind of make your build your own.
Osche, danke dir auch.
And we've received a lot of feedback on the tempering system, and we're really committed to iterating on and making sure this system.
Kann ich mal ein schnelles Plus in den Chat haben für alle, die das Tempering gut finden oder ein Minus, wenn ihr das scheiße findet? Und Go, dankeschön für die 100 Bits.
That you get to
Weil ich glaube, das Tempering spaltet ein bisschen die Community. Daki auch, dankeschön dir.
And there was a big disparity here, where some affixes that were on weapon tempering were multiplicatively increasing your player power,
Ja, das
right?
stimmt,
Things
ja.
like double projectiles or things of that nature, or bash cleaving, which was a multiplicative bonus. And others, not so much, right? You had some other ones that were
Diablo
more duration
survive.
or size effect. And they just were hard to compare against each other. And so going forward in patch 2.0, we've made all weapon tempering affixes multiplicative damage increases, oftentimes to very specific skills. And to accommodate this, we already had one bonus projectiles, and now we're going to have new affixes that give skills chance to deal double damage, which means if triggers the chance to deal double damage, the entire skill is just going to do twice as much damage as before. Every hit of it will deal double damage. It's kind of an all or nothing kind of deal. And then the chance to hit twice is the chance for any time it deals damage, you just get an extra hit of damage. And this allows you to trigger things like lucky hit procs or anything that counts the number of times you deal damage. That's going to trigger an extra time with the hit twice. Offensive tempering affixes, these are the ones that can also go on your weapons, but can go on other spots as well. These are going to be additive damage increases. And these will often be to broader categories like bonus fire damage or bonus critical strike damage.
Bin ich gerade auch der Einzige oder der Chat? Fragt ihr euch auch, wieso einen Item-Squeeze, wenn sie jetzt mit Tempering anziehen? Hä? Habe ich was verpeilt?
Had the sever projectiles chance to cast twice, but now we've got new ones that are chance for reap to hit twice. So you cast reap, and every target you hit, there's just a chance to get 2 hits on that target instead of 1.
Ist das AOE-Damage von Diablo 3?
There is a chance for the entire skill to deal double damage to every target that it hits. Additionally, we've moved those size and duration affixes, which we think are really cool and really interesting ways of modifying your skills. We've moved those over to the utility category. So they're not directly competing with these multiplicative damage increases. You're not going to feel bad that, oh, I'm missing out on damage just to make my area hit a little bit larger or to have a longer duration on a buff. So there's not as much opportunity cost to investing in those size and duration affixes, which are still really cool ways to customize your character. We just don't want them to compete with damage. And finally, we know that oftentimes tempering leads itself to, hey, I see this list of 5 or even 6 affixes sometimes. We really are going to try to be limiting tempering recipes to it.
Das ist eine gute Änderung, weil das war wirklich total unfair, wenn du ein Rezept hattest mit 6 Sachen drauf und du konntest es nie treffen. Das ist eine geile Änderung.
To kind of
Aber eigentlich müsste jedes Rezept 4 haben, damit es fair ist.
We're aiming for just 3 on the recipe, depending on how the grouping them together in ways that make sense. So this is an active area that we're working on, really trying to make sure that it's not quite, it's easier for you to get the right affix out of the tempering recipe by limiting that.
Liska, bei 4 Sachen triffst du nicht, was du brauchst. Learn to aim. Du spielst so viel PUBG, du musst doch mittlerweile gut aimen.
Skill ranks.
Seitenhiebe auf die Mods verteilt, checks.
But just like every other skill in the game, ultimate skills can now be ranked up to rank 5 in the skill tree. And just like every other skill, increasing the skill rank will increase the damage output of your ultimate skills, but it's also going to give you cooldown reduction on these ultimate skills as well. So oftentimes other skills, you just kind of get one or the other, right? Sometimes it's a cooldown reduction, sometimes it's a damage or healing increase. On ultimate skills, you're going to get kind of the best of both worlds. It's going to be increasing the damage output and reducing the cooldown. And finally, effects that do grant bonus skill ranks on this, such as Harlequin's Crest, the Shaco, that gives plus to all skill ranks. These are only going to apply to ultimate skills that you've already learned in the skill tree. And this is to make sure that you still can only equip one ultimate skill. You can't get plus ranks to all skills and then suddenly have access to 4 ultimate skills. We still don't want that. We still want you to just pick one. But you're just going to be getting, you're going to be able to really juice that ultimate skill up. If you really want to make, lacerate be really strong, that's going to be a powerful effect that you can invest more skill points into. All right, so those are some of the general updates. Let's now talk about the new content coming for each individual class, starting here with our Barbarian. All right, so sometimes you're playing as a Barbarian and you experience a problem, right? You are standing here and there is an enemy over there. What to do? Well, a good barbarian is going to throw their weapon at the enemy over there to kill them at a distance. Right, so now we've got a new skill called Mighty Throw. It's going to hurl your weapon at an enemy. It's going to deal damage on impact, and then it's going to stick in the ground and do some pulses of damage over time. So even if the initial impact doesn't kill them, there's going to be some extra pulses there. Additionally, we've got some upgrades for it, just like our other skills. Enhanced Mighty Throw is going to increase your attack speed while the weapon is out. And then you can either opt into Fighter's Mighty Throw, which is going to give bonuses to that pulsing damage. It causes your weapon swaps to pulse for more and give you a bit of barrier. Or you're going to opt into Warrior's Mighty Throw, which is going to dramatically increase the initial impact damage, and it's going to stun enemies on impact. Let's take a video clip of this in action. All right, so we've got Barb, just simple example here with a few enemies. Throws out this ephemeral version of the weapon, lands, deals a big chunk of damage, and then pulses over time before returning back to you.
I was a huge fan of double throw in Diablo 2, so this is really exciting.
Yeah, it looks sweet too. It's kind of like bluish yellow, like ancient-y kind of color scheme to it. The VFX looks awesome on it.
So ranged barb is definitely happening in patch 2.0.
For sure. If you want to spec really heavily into this, yeah, you're going to be throwing weapons out like crazy.
Oh, neuerdings, ja.
All right, so we've also got some new key passives and new legendary Paragon nodes for every class here. So for Barbarian, we've got Barbed Carapace. This is a key passive, so it's going to increase your thorns based on how much fury you're spending. And whenever you cast a skill with a cooldown, it's going to grant you unhindered for a duration, which allows you to move through enemies. And then enemies that are close to you are going to take bonus, or going to take damage from your thorns every second. You're going to kind of pulse damage of your thorns every second. Now this is really cool. It really enables Thorns Barb, which we had a little bit of support for, but one of the big problems of Thorns is that you really wanted enemies to hit you and hit you quickly. And this gives you another alternative to deal bonus damage or to really pay off for building up all that thorns with this new key passive. Additionally, we've got a legendary Paragon node, the Force of Nature. Your Earthquakes have a chance to spawn Dust Devils, and your Earthquake damage is going to be increased by your damage against close enemies. So this is really plays into these Earthquakes and Dust Devil effects, which we kind of call sub-powers internally. These effects that are not skills that you cast directly, but some of your legendary effects will spawn these Earthquakes and Dust Devils. This is just a new way to really power those up and blend them together in the same build. Additionally, we're adding some new passives to the skill tree, and this has really helped to give you a way, along with ultimate skill ranks, to spend a lot of those new points that you're getting by leveling up from 50 to 60. Those new skill points you're getting, we're giving you some new ways to invest those.
Kannst du mal eben drücken? Ja.
All right, we also got some new items, of course. We've got the Ugly Bastard Helm, a new unique helm for Barbarians. And it makes you so ugly that whenever you are berserking, all of your damage is converted into fire damage. And so that's really interesting. Barbars always had this little bit of like light fire theme. You had a few different effects that dealt fire damage. And now if you really want to play a fire barb, this is the unique helm for you.
Kann ich mal einen Plus haben? Spielt wer von euch einen Range Barb?
To deal some fire damage, and aspect of Shattering Steel, which will cause your Steel Grasp and Iron Maelstrom to do some bonus physical damage.
Oh.
All right, moving on to the Druid. The Druid gets a new skill, a new core skill, in fact, called Stone Burst. And this is a core skill that's channeled. It kind of has a very unique kind of input mechanism compared to pretty much any other skill in Diablo 4. And as you're channeling it, you target an area, and as you channel it, the affected area grows in size over about 1 second of channeling. And at any point, you can release the channel, and it's going to deal a big burst of damage to whatever size you kind of landed on there. You could tap it really quickly and just do 1 pulse of damage to a small area, or you can channel up for a little bit longer.
Kann ich einen Plus haben für alle, die nicht so begeistert sind von Channeling-Skills, weil du musst ja stehen bleiben. Und stehen bleiben heißt, du kannst nicht laufen. Und nicht laufen heißt in Diablo, du bist langsam. Und wenn du langsam bist, dann farmst du langsam. Marci, danke dir für den Resub.
Single target capability of a core skill.
Das finde ich ein bisschen schade.
And Primal Stone Burst gives you some attack speed. And Raging Stone Burst will dramatically increase the spirit cost, but also give it a ton more damage. So if you have a ton of spirit generation, then that might be the upgrade you look for in Stone Burst.
Ich glaube, da kommt gleich noch ein
Video
Video.
of this in action.
Ja, siehst du hier. Jetzt pass auf.
All right, so you see it ticks up. There's like 3 different levels, like small, medium, and large. In this one, the druid kind of held it for a while, but you could release it at any time. And so here you see just kind of rapid firing a lot of quick, small shots, just because they knew that would be enough to clear out the enemies here. And also while you're channeling, it does some pulses of damage to enemies in that area as well.
Bin ziemlich unterbewältigt.
The channel explosion is so satisfying to blow up. Just so.
Gibt's das Wort unterwältigt?
Really
Huge
feels
and
amazing.
it looks so sweet too. I really hats off to the VFX artists who worked on making these look so beautiful. The new skills here. All right, so of course Druid also has new passives, a new key passive called One with Nature that really empowers companion builds. You know, we've heard a lot that players love playing with companions. They're wolves, they're poison creepers, they're ravens, and this is going to be the key passive for you. So all of your companion skills gain an additional companion and they deal increased damage.
Oh, Minion-Druide, schau dir das
And there's
an.
also a little bonus, basically, with you gain the passive effect of all of the companion skills. Now, if you're taking this key passive, you're probably taking these companions anyway, but just in case, you know, your build is such that, well, I just want to take, you know, 2 out of the 3, right?
Haben die einfach einen Shaco-Effekt auf eine Legendary Note gesetzt? Echt jetzt? Plus 4 Ranks auf die Skills?
When you take this key passive, because we just want you to have tons of these companions, really leading the charge here. We've also got Untamed, a new legendary Paragon node that plays right into this One with Nature key passive. Casting a companion skill is going to increase the companion active skill will grant you bonus ranks to all of your companion skills for a time to really buff up the damage of those. Just like before, we've got some new passives coming into the skill tree as well. I think some of these might have some temporary icons on them. So like I said, these were from an early build. Some of the icons or very specific art might be adjusted. So, you know, bear with us. This is the nature of PTR and early development. All right, moving on to some of the items. Oh no, we've got a video. Oh right, a video of really leading a wolf pack here, right? So this includes wolves with the storm.
Finde ich leider geil.
Werewolf.
Finde ich geil. Ja, als Druide ein Haufen Wölfe. Ist das ein Wolfsrudel?
Pete is probably involved. You just have, what is that, 7 wolves following you around? You really get to lead the wolf pack with this. This
is the best video in our presentation. Well, actually, no, sorry. This is the second best video in our presentation. You guys will see the best video in our presentation, but yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, for all you werewolf lovers out there, this one is going to be really sweet. I'm really looking forward to playing with this in patch 2.0. All right, so new items. So they've got the Stone of Vehemen. This is a unique totem that's going to empower your Stone Burst, the new core skill. So channeling it is going to grant you some damage reduction, and the final explosion will deal increased damage based on how long you were channeling it. So this just really encourages you to build it up to that max size and let off a huge explosion. And gives you
Das Problem ist halt, wenn die Gegner davor schon sterben oder keiner in dem Radius steht, dann bringt dir halt eine dicke Explosion trotzdem nichts.
Legendaries on Druid than the other classes, just because Stone Burst being a core skill, we know that the kind of bar to make a core skill really viable and useful, it does need a good amount of legendary items to support it, to really make a full build out of it. So that's why we've added 2 legendaries here for Stone Burst. We've got the aspect of Anticline Burst, which causes Stone Burst to deal increased damage, and if you cast it at or above 100 spirit here, it's going to immediately be at that maximum size.
Ich bin auch
so you don't
verwirrt vom
necessarily
Rang
need to
her.
channel it as long as you are casting it when you have a lot of spirit. This synergizes really well with the Earth and Might key passive, which gives you full spirit when it triggers. So you can trigger Earth and Might and then immediately get.
Das heißt nur, dass der Rang auf dem maximalen Wert gerollt ist. Das ist der Aspektrang.
Alters Stone Burst in a rather interesting.
Weißt du, du musst ja den gleichen Aspekt den öfter finden und erst wenn der Wert Maximum ist, hast du auch automatisch den höchsten Rang.
For a time and reduces Stone Burst spirit cost.
Momentan
This kind of
16.
converts Stone Burst away from necessarily being your primary damage source to being a bit more of a setup skill, right? You can kind of debuff enemies, and then you can find some interesting builds where you have other ways of spending your spirit, maybe another core skill or boulder or some other primary damage source, and then you can use Stone Burst to kind of set up that build. Really interesting to see how players, what kind of builds you make with Shattered Defenses. Additionally, we've got aspect of the Rabid Bear, which empowers your Grizzly Rage to apply rabies and increases your poison output. Storm Crow, which is just lightning ravens. Your ravens are now lightning. It looks awesome. and Aspect of the Agile Wolf, which gives Shred a 4th attack. Shred normally is like a 3-part combo, and now it's a 4-part combo that deals even more damage on that 4th hit, and it's going to knock down enemies as well. All right, so that is Druid. Really looking forward to playing some Druid in 2.0. But let's move on to the Necromancer, because we've got a lot to get through. We've got Soul Rift. This is a new Darkness ultimate skill. So Necromancers kind of had 3 ultimates already. They had one that was Blood, one that was Bone, and one that was related to Summoning. And now we've kind of completed it, and we've added a Darkness or Shadow damage ultimate. Soul Rift creates an area around your character, kind of follows with you, that just constantly deals damage over time. And it's going to be sucking out the souls of enemies who you're hitting. And every time it sucks out a soul from an enemy, you're going to gain some essence, and you're going to gain a barrier. So you can stack up this barrier. It helps you be survivable, and it deals, really good damage over time. Supreme Soul Rift gives you bonus damage for every soul that you absorb, and Prime Soul Rift causes the soul absorption to also apply vulnerable. Let's take a video of this in action here. Right, so enemies all coming up.
Super useful, Charles, right? Now that you have another way to give yourself defenses. Necro has historically had some trouble with that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really important part here.
Warum soll jemand, der tot ist, Defense brauchen? Kann ja nicht mehr sterben.
We're adding a bit more barrier into...
Alter, die Area ist aber riesig. Schau mal an, wie groß der Kreis ist. Schau mal.
Really easy time surviving. They had a lot of fortify and a lot of max health. And really, the other ones, like the Bone and Shadow Necro, didn't have quite as much survivability. And so now we're introducing more barrier in more places to ensure that kind of non-blood Necromancer builds, the Shadow and the Bone and Summon Necros, have a bit more survivability and are able to scale into that late game pretty well. All right, so as I mentioned, the new passive. So they have a new key passive called Affliction. That there's this new concept of Affliction where applying vulnerable, crowd control, or shadow damage over time effects to enemies will apply them with Affliction, which is going to make them take increased damage from you and your minions. Additionally, when you apply a curse skill to someone or to an enemy who has this affliction, you're going to do a big chunk of shadow damage. So this kind of turns your curse skills, your Decrepify and Iron Maiden, into offensive skills. You can curse an area and then they take a big chunk of damage as well. And then this will scale up with the bonus damage that you've dealt, or the bonus affixes that you have for that crowd control, vulnerable, and shadow damage. And along that same theme, the new legendary Paragon node Frail.
Ja, hört sich für mich jetzt nicht so einladend an. Wollen wir wetten, dass Mage wieder das geilste neue Talent kriegt, weil Blizzard einfach Mage liebt? Ja. Und der Schurke leer ausgeht?
I want to highlight Necrotic Fortitude here in the upper right. That gives you, it's just a generic passive that gives you a chance, a lucky hit chance to get.
Ich sage euch, was Mage kriegt. Mage kriegt diesen Eye-Beam, was es in Diablo 3 schon gegeben hat.
To play into the more...
Wie hieß der Strahl? Könnt ihr euch noch an die Skillung erinnern? Mit Shandodo?
Going back to Affliction really quick, I love the idea of using my curse.
Nee, den anderen, den blauen.
Like as a damage skill. I think that's going to be such a blast.
Yeah, it's really cool to just... yeah.
Archon, genau. Mage kriegt Archon.
It's really thematic.
Oder die Kettenexplosion.
Pairs really well with.
Dann kannst du wieder Glühwürmchen spielen.
Now that we have way more size increases in utility, it gives you so many more utility options. Those curses get pretty huge, and it feels great.
Yeah, for all of us who just want to win by debuff spamming, I love that one.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about some of the new items coming for Necromancer here. So we've got a new unique item, the Unmaker, a unique helm. This is going to empower the Soul Rift, the new ultimate skill. Of course, you gain some skill ranks to Soul Rift, because now ultimate skills have skill ranks. And every 30 essence that you spend while Soul Rift is active will increase its duration up to 8 seconds. So as long as you're active and kind of spending the essence with the Unmaker, you're going to have a very long duration of Soul Rift. And then for every essence that you gain while it's active, which absorbing the souls does trigger essence gain, you're going to do a pulse of damage around you, some bonus damage. And so it really encourages you to just keep Soul Rift up all the time, be constantly gaining and spending the essence, and it's going to be really, really fun to make that build work. Additionally, we've got Reaping Lotus aspect. This empowers your Sever, your core skill. Sever will no longer return to you. Previously, Sever was kind of an out and back situation. Now it just goes out, and then it splits into 3 specters at the end, deals some extra bonus damage, and then that's the end of the Sever. So it really does empower it on the swing out, and looks really cool. We've got aspect of Fell Gluttony that empowers your Golem. Whenever you cast your Golem's active, deals a big pulse of damage around it. And your Golem will then consume corpses to reduce its cooldown. So anybody who really wants to build around making your Golem as strong as possible, this is going to be the aspect for you. And finally, we've got Phasing Poltergeists aspect, which causes your Bone Spirit to split into 3 spirits that deal a percentage of the damage as well. I think we got a video clip of this one because it looks really sweet.
Jetzt bin ich gespannt.
So you cast Bone Spirit at one target, and then it spawns 3 little mini Bone Spirits to seek out nearby enemies as well. So it kind of gives you increased area of effect, and if there's just one target, of course, it'll reconverge.
Sieht halt leider gut aus.
As well, but also just adds a bit more AoE capability for your Bone Spirit build. Very cool.
Jetzt kommt's.
All right. So Rogue. Rogue gets Dance of Knives. This is a new channeled skill for Rogue. It's an agility cutthroat skill. And it also has a pretty interesting mechanic where it has some charges that will recharge, and how long you can channel it is based on how many charges you have. It's going to take 1 charge per second of channeling, but there's no energy cost or...
Ist das ein Channel-Skill für Urke? Echt jetzt?
You're going to be spinning around, you're going to be throwing knives at enemies nearby.
Da möchte ich das Video sehen.
And dodge chance. Really is kind of like a spin to win kind of build on Rogue here. You've got Enhanced Dance of Knives, which gives you some charge.
Also, kann mal jeder einen Plus machen, der einen Schurke spielt?
Constant motion.
Haben wir den? Gibt es überhaupt Leute, die Schurke spielen?
And Methodical Dance of Knives drops some stun grenades.
Ihr könnt es schon bei Let's Dance anmelden. Ich habe lange auf den Joke gewartet. Ich bin echt gespannt, Dance of Knives, wie das aussieht.
Let's take a look at this in action.
Jetzt hier.
So here we got the Rogue just going spinning, throwing some daggers around at everyone, and yeah.
This is awesome for speed farming. This is like the best speed farming skill.
And that animation is just amazing.
Absolutely. And you can see there at the end they had the upgrade that drops a bunch of stun grenades at the end.
Wie fühlt es sich an, als Schurke beim Wirbelwindbarbar zu klauen, das Talent? Fühlt ihr euch gut? Fühlt ihr euch gut dabei, dass ihr beim Barbaren das Talent klauen müsst?
Ton of fun.
Yeah, those are perfect for like you run into an elite pack after slaughtering a bunch of normals and it just annihilates the elites. It feels amazing.
Yeah. All right, so we've got new passives as well. New key passive is
Ich glaube, für Ninja-Build reicht das nicht.
And this is empowering your non-physical damage. So rogues can do poison, shadow, and cold through their various imbuements. And when you deal 3 different types of that non-physical damage, the potency of your imbuement skills is going to be dramatically increased for a time. And the more bonus damage that you build on your gear for bonus poison, shadow, or cold damage, the further that potency gets increased. Really encouraging you to mix and match the different elements. It's really thematic with the alchemical kind of...
Kurze Frage in den Chat, ist Zonda oder Helix noch da? Zonda oder Helix? Zonda oder Helix?
Wanted to give that robust support of a key passive for.
And
also we've got a legendary Paragon node, the Dance Macabre, which encourages this kind of 1-2 combo of casting mobility or subterfuge skill, increases the damage of your...
Da steckt echt viel von Diablo 3. Die sind im Discord, ja, ich wollte sie nur darauf hinweisen, weil Chasul möchte ja immer den Jäger spielen. Und wenn er beim Add-on Release den Jäger spielt, löschen wir seinen Account. Jäger wird nicht gespielt zum Add-on.
As well. And of course, we've got the new skill tree passives as well. All right, new items. We've got the Pit Fighter's Gall. This is the Ancestral Unique Ring. Or sorry, just it's a unique ring. It's not necessarily, you can find it before Ancestral Tier. And this Pit Fighter's Gall will empower your Smoke Grenade. So your Smoke Grenade skill will increase your critical strike damage and then leave a cloud of shadows behind. And while you're within that cloud of shadows, you're going to be constant.
Meint ihr, das Beste kommt zum Schluss und jetzt kommt der Mage und der Mage knallt alles andere weg? Ich glaube nämlich, dass das jetzt passieren wird.
Pit Fighter's Gall is just going to really enable that when you cast Smoke Grenade. We've got an aspect of Star Shards. This is a new legendary to directly support Dance of Knives. And the daggers from Dance of Knives have a chance to shatter, creating more shards.
Eben, ein super Video kommt noch.
And you can now use combo points on Dance of Knives to further increase the channel duration if you've opted into the combo points specialization. Aspect of Poisonous Clouds plays well with Pit Fighter's Gull. When you gain stealth, you create a cloud of poison damage. And aspect of Splintering Shards, there's just a chance whenever you're hitting a frozen enemy to create some ice spikes. So if you're freezing enemies because you're playing Alchemical Admixture and using Cold Imbue, Splintering Shards might be a good aspect for you as well. All right, moving on to the Sorceress. The Sorceress gets a new conjuration skill called the Familiar. This is a conjuration skill that is all 3 elements. It is a shock skill, a pyromancy skill, and a frost skill. So there's 3 charges of it, so you can cast it back to back, and you summon a familiar of the element of your last skill cast. So if you just cast a pyromancy skill, you're going to summon a fire familiar. If you just cast a lightning skill, you'll summon a lightning familiar.
Ohne Scheiß, ist das vom Runenmeister von Last Epoch geklaut? Habt ihr auch so das Gefühl?
Will do bonus effect.
Erinnert mich jetzt voll dran.
Apply some burning to enemies that it's around. The cold familiar will chill, and lightning familiar will stun. And of course, their damage type is going to be based on what type they are, so that it'll benefit from all of your
Ruti, danke für den
bonus
Resub.
fire damage.
Los, zeig mal, wie das aussieht.
Is really great, right?
Zeig uns das Video.
Some of the passives on.
Jetzt pass auf, zeig uns das Video.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if there's a lot of passives that say, hey, you get bonuses against burning enemies, for instance. Now, if you have the fire familiar, that's going to really easily be able to apply that constantly, and you're going to have pretty high uptime on having familiars out because of the way the charge and duration works. Let's take a look at this in action. All right, so initially we cast a frost familiar here, right? It's jumping around and it's landing, it's dealing frost damage. Then we cast a fire skill. Now we get a fire familiar jumping around and kind of dive bombing on enemies. And then finally we get a shock familiar, a lightning familiar here that's going to deal lightning damage. So you can kind of
Ist das langweilig?
skills you use, what combination you cast them in. And it's really flexible. It fits into a lot of different builds. Even if you're just a pure, say, fire sword, and you just want to do fire damage, you just want to do burning, this could still fit because you're just going to be able to summon the fire familiar. But it really reaches its maximum potential as you're kind of mix and matching these to suit the situation and apply the debuffs that you want onto the enemies.
You can have quite a few of these out. For the Sega demonstration, I think we only have a couple of them out on screen, but I think you can have up to 6, right?
Yeah, you can have up to 6, and that would make a lot more sense once we get to talk about some of the unique items that are coming with this patch. But first, let's talk about the new passives, and we've got Enlightenment. This really also plays into the concept of mixing and matching the elements. You see it's got all 3 kind of colors on there. Casting a skill grants a stack of Enlightenment or 3 stacks if your skill was a different element to the one before. So you're alternating here. And whenever you gain max stacks, you're going to become enlightened and you get a ton of bonuses for being in this enlightened state. But then it drops off over time.
Wollen wir wetten, die haben
Really
ein
a
Item.
reward for mixing and matching those elements, more so.
Vielleicht haben die ein Unique-Item, dass die dauerhaft da bleiben, weil ich habe nämlich gesehen, dass die nochmal 10% Damage on top geben.
Each fire, lightning, and cold attack you make against an enemy increases the damage they take from all sources by 10%. So you really need to hit them with all 3 types to gain the maximum bonus here. All right.
Ist der Season-Titel dann Diablo 3 Reborn? War das der Season 6-Titel?
A unique gloves, and this plays right into the familiar. So whenever you cast familiar with this unique on, you're going to summon all 3 elemental variants at once.
Yeah.
However, it does come with a bit of restrictions on it. So familiar's duration is going to be dramatically increased and its cooldown reduced, but you're going to have 1 less charge of it. So you won't be able to spam this quite as much, but you press the button once or twice and then you get the maximum familiars out. They're all over the screen and they're going to last for quite a long time with this unique glove. So it's going to be really, really powerful too. If you're all about this conjuration build, all about amping up the power of the familiar, it's an awesome unique for that. Additionally, we've got new legendaries for the aspect of overheating. After channeling Incinerate for a time, you're going to deal bonus damage to the target. And casting Incinerate will refresh and maintain the bonus. So really just powering up your Incinerate. Charged Flash, this empowers charged bolts. And after you hit a certain number of enemies with charged bolts, your next 3 casts of charged bolts will no longer send out bolts. They're going to send out big waves of lightning that deal even more damage, and it's always going to be a crit. And then aspect of elemental constellation, once again, more about the mixing and matching of all 3 elements. Casting one of the elemental skills will summon a matching type elemental dagger that'll pierce through enemies. And the damage of that dagger is going to be increased if you get all 3 of the different element types in that time frame. All right, so I think, right, we've got new mythic uniques. Of course, how can I forget? New mythic unique items. These are the strongest items in the game. We've got...
Weil die Leute noch mehr Bock haben, random Mythics zu farmen.
The cool part about this is it's just inherent affix. It's going to grant +1 skill rank to all passives. And this is really awesome as we're adding new passives into the skill tree. This is just a ton of power for this new unique chest. And its effect is, if you haven't attacked in the last 2 seconds, you're going to gain stealth and bonus movement speed. Now, stealth historically has just been a mechanic that has been on rogues and a little bit...
Wisst ihr, was ein guter Stat für ein mythisches Item wäre? Ein richtig guter Stack? +3 auf Kreativität. Lass den wirken, der war ein bisschen gemein.
Move somewhere else in the dungeon.
Lass ihn wirken.
And it's a really simple line, all passives, but it's literally all passives, which is insane. Like it's incredibly powerful.
Absolutely. And we've also got the Heir of Perdition, a mythic unique helm. And this one has as an interesting effect, so it says, give into hatred and earn Lilith's favor.
200 damage to angels and demons oder 1 to all passives.
Yes. And the second line here says, slaughtering enemies to briefly steal Lilith's favor from, or slaughter enemies to briefly steal Lilith's favor from nearby allies. So this means if you're playing in a group with somebody else who happens to have the Heir of Perdition equipped, you are able to steal Lilith's favor from them. Lilith will only favor one of you. And you actually gain double the bonus of this, right? If you steal someone else's favor, you get 120% bonus damage, and they would get 0. But if you're just playing this solo, no one else has Heir of Perdition around, it's just a flat 60% bonus damage, which is still a ton and very impactful for a mythic unique. All right, I believe that is actually everything. Wow, that is so much new class.
Das heißt, in der Gruppe stealt der Highest Damage Dealer die anderen 3 und knallt dann durch mit 180% multiplikativen Damage.
Existing skills and legendaries. So make sure you definitely check out the patch notes. There is still more changes to come, but we're already really deep into this Campfire chat, and we didn't want to extend it too much longer. So make sure you check out the patch notes for all the details on those other changes coming as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Charles. I know we have gone through a lot of information. We're in hour 1.5 of this Campfire chat. As I said, and I mentioned on social, like this is going to be a very beefy Campfire chat. We still have 2 more things that we do want to really cover off. And as Charles had mentioned, there are a lot of other class changes that we didn't actually fit within the presentation, like a lot of balance-specific items. So that will be on patch notes, and patch notes will be available on our blog for PTR immediately after the stream. So please check that out. We are going to jump into some quality of life items. And so, Colin, do you want to take us through some quick quality of life items that will become...
Los, Colin, rette das Ding.
Yeah, I'll go quick so we can get to the super exciting, cool thing. Yeah, so the first one here is you can now select your preferred town portal location. So how that's going to work is you're going to open up the map and hover over any of the waypoints, and when you right-click on it, it's going to set that as essentially your preferred location, and whenever you town portal, it's going to take you there. So this is really helpful for when you're doing whispers, for example.
Das ist mega geil.
You just set the tree of whispers as your preferred location, do some whispers. When you press T, you go right there. You don't have to open up the map, then click on the waypoint, then click on accept. Like, it's all very seamless, and it's just removing a lot of the inputs that you have to do to get back to town quickly. The next thing here is we're adding a dungeon key inventory tab for things like nightmare sigils. So that just gives you more space for more activities, so much room for activities. The next one here is we've done a pretty substantial rework of monster CC, and this is in the spirit of we want to have really clear sort of delineations between normal monsters and elite monsters, and we didn't like how often you were getting slowed down and how mandatory unstoppable could feel. So, you know, it always felt bad to be fighting this huge horde of enemies, and you see this elite, and you're paying attention to the elite, and then like this goat man mauler comes up and like sneak attacks you and knocks you down for 3 seconds, and that's the thing that kills you. That always felt like bullshit, right? So, what we've done is we've sort of overhauled a lot of the normal monster CCs to be quick and snappy. Like you still feel them, you kind of want to avoid them still, but they're much less sort of the reason why you die entirely. So the vampire impale, when like the two-hander like comes and stabs you and stuns you for 3 seconds, that's turned into an immobilize. So you can't move, but you can just smack him in the face. And then the werewolf leap is another great example where previously they'd come out of stealth and like leap attack on you, and you get dazed and you'd walk around confused. And now they just it does a quick knockback. This next change here is small, but I think it's a blaster's delight, which is all the monsters that had really long death animations all die instantly. You don't have to wait for the loot to hit the ground. It's very satisfying. You know, the big ass like spider hosts that crawl towards you. When you kill them, they pop instantly, and all the spiders go and hit the walls, and it feels great. The zombies feel really good too. It like they pop instantly when you kill them. And it's a very satisfying experience. So this should speed up combat quite a bit, and it just feels really good. The next thing here is their socketable inventory tab, another tab for you to put socketables like gems and other socketables. And then there's also an additional stash tab that we're going to add. The next thing, if we could roll the clip, we took out just about all the
Ist der jetzt weg?
all would go up and then like click on the plunger and don't get hit by the spikes. That's all been replaced entirely with just monster packs of varying sizes, and it's just way more seamless. In this case, we only rolled some normal monsters, but sometimes it's a couple of elite packs. You never really know what you're going to get. It's like a Easter or a Kinder egg, I should say. And it just helps the dungeon flow substantially, like to just sort of blast through those things.
Wieso brauchen wir ein Socket Inventory Tab? Rafft das noch wer nicht? Hä?
Layouts, so when you play it, just going to roll out differently. This is really just iterating on our dungeon set to make them feel much more sort of flow-inducing, not slowing you down. And then the next one here is minor, but it actually feels pretty good, and it has a big impact on the game. When you get those Paragon and level up notifications, we're actually going to tell you how many. So sometimes you'll realize, oh my god, I have like 15 skill points I can spend. And it actually tells you the number. And it's a nice quality of life change. So I think that's everything.
Awesome. Thank you, Colin, for running through quickly. I appreciate the efficiency of going through all the quality of life changes. Now I know Jeevan has been quiet over here. He's only chimed in a little bit. And we do want to talk about a new thing that is coming to Vessel of Hatred specifically, and for Vessel of Hatred players. So, Jeevan, will you talk us through it a little bit?
Yeah, so it's my privilege to kind of talk about a feature that the whole team's been working very hard on that we haven't really mentioned much. And you know, we looked at the expansion. We had all these cool things, you know, torment,
was jetzt wohl kommt, ey.
Spiritborn, but we thought there was a hole, and we wanted to particularly give build crafters a new way to play for Vessel of Hatred. This is for folks who, like me, whose dream cooking show has nothing to do with British baking, but instead would be called Colin's Kitchen. Twitch chat, if you would binge Colin's Kitchen, let us know.
Das ist ein Witzbold.
So, yeah, let's, and I think some of you already kind of have an idea.
Alter, bring nicht Kanalswürfel, bring nichts, bring ja nicht. Wenn mich die Ansage jetzt 1.000 Euro kostet.
Let's get into, as some of you already know, we're going to be talking about Runewords.
Bitte was?
Yeah. So let's start with a little background. So Runewords were in Diablo 2, and they were a very powerful way of augmenting gear with socketable content. And
Dankeschön, dass ihr Diablo 4 Add-on nicht gekauft habt. Jetzt müssen sie doch Runenwörter bringen.
You can look on the right. That's one of the most iconic examples from Diablo 2. The name is Enigma, and you would make it with runes, Ja if Bur, and it would get you some really cool skills that would come out of it when you put it all together. And for Diablo 4, we wanted to retain the soul of what Diablo 2 Runewords did. which is combining socketable components and creating more powerful items. But we also wanted to do something that felt appropriately fresh and new. And we wanted to lean into what's unique about the modern game to make the Diablo 4 version of Runewords and make it stand on its own and really feel like the right version to be given to players.
Yeah, and what was so awesome about Diablo 2 Runewords, right, was you got this set of runes that made
Das ist jetzt aber nur für Leute, die das Add-on
like
kaufen,
being able
oder?
to teleport on other classes. Like, what the hell? Barbarian is teleporting across the screen? We really wanted to embrace that in a way that extended builds and didn't necessarily enforce you must play with this item. And we're really excited to share what that's sort of manifested, right?
Yeah, and you all have a lot of builds that you started with from the base game, and we want to add on to those.
Oh, jetzt kommt's so.
So, what are Runewords? They're a way for you to make your own spells. So there are two types of runes. There's runes of ritual, and they specify actions from the player that they have to trigger. So you can see the example here of the Yule rune, which is a legendary quality rune of ritual. You have to cast a skill, which has a cooldown. So, Frost Nova or something like that. Then you have runes of invocation. And these grant powerful effects as a result of satisfying those runes of ritual. So the example here, the Gar rune, gives you 2.5% critical strike chance for 5 seconds. And you can stack up to 10 times, up to 25%. And you can mix and match these. There'll be a lot of different runes of ritual and runes of invocation, and you can put them together as you see fit. So when you combine a rune of ritual and rune of invocation, you pair them together, you put them in an item with 2 sockets, boom, you form a rune word. And as you can tell, there's going to be rarity. We're going to have magic, rare, and legendary, and the higher rarity runes will have more potent conditions or effects. So one of the important elements of this is called offering, which is the rune resource system. So your runes of ritual will generate offering, and they're meant to feed into their linked runes of invocation so that they can consume that offering. And the sort of more demanding rituals that we would ask of you as a player gain you more offering. At the same time, the more powerful invocations that you would try to get require more offering. And so there's sort of like shared economy there.
Ich glaube, der Würfel kommt
So
nicht
you can
mehr.
look at these runes on the right. You get 50 offering for casting a skill with a cooldown. And this rune
Mal ganz kurz ein Plus in den Chat, wer keine Ahnung hat, was Runen sind oder wer vielleicht das von Diablo 2 nicht kennt. Weil dann können wir es hier nochmal ganz kurz vielleicht niederbrechen für die Leute, die jetzt überhaupt planlos sind. Also meine Damen und Herren, Runen, im Endeffekt findest du diese Teile und du kannst die dann kombinieren in Items und dann werden neue Effekte freigeschalten oder dann entstehen Effekte. Wir werden euch eine Seite machen, da siehst du genau, welche 2 Runen steckst du wie zusammen, damit du was rauskriegst. Ganz simpel. Du flutest das Ding, steckst es dann in die Brustplatte rein, sagen wir eben wie man es hier sieht, eine Yule-Rune und eine Gar-Rune und dann kommt da unten dieser Effekt raus. Und dieser Effekt wird dann als Runenwort bezeichnet. Also einzelne Runen kombiniert oder zusammengesteckt, die legst dann alles ins Gleiche, dann hast du Runenwörter. Das, was ihr hier seht, ist DLC only. Das Add-on nicht gekauft, kannst du nicht nutzen.
Ritual trigger, for example, on a really low offering rune of invocation, it's almost a way to start scaling that rune of invocation in a completely different way beyond just triggering the rune.
Exactly. Yeah. It lets us as developers be more flexible in creating wide ranges of effects, sort of small ones, big ones, and also the same for the rituals. And you get to kind of decide which ones you think fit your build or are cool. And we do our best to make sure that you can almost cook up anything.
So
a few rules. Runes can be socketed into items with 2 sockets. We've added another item to get 2 sockets for Vessel of Hatred.
Die haben das Runensystem abgeschwächt. Ach du Scheiße, wie schlecht ist das denn?
And chest. They can only be paired with a rune of the opposite type. So you have to pair a rune of ritual with a rune of invocation. You can have a maximum of 2 rune words equipped. You can't equip the same rune twice. And they're available for users who own Vessel of Hatred. They stack in your inventory in the new socketable inventory tab, which will also have your gems. And runes are tradable between other players who own Vessel of Hatred. And they unlock with a quest in the campaign, both runes dropping from as loot, but also rune crafting, which we'll get into later. And they drop at a higher rate in the Undercity, which is a specific place you can farm them.
Das ist wohl
So
eher
now
ein
let's get
kleiner
into some
Schritt
clips
rein.
here. We get to actually see it in action.
Jetzt bin ich
So this is the
gespannt.
barbarian, and the rune of ritual they have is travel 5 meters. Very simple. And they're going to join that to the earthquake, which is a legendary aspect that you've already seen before, which requires 100 offering. So you see, we'll put them together in this item. And then all they have to do is just run around. Boom, earthquakes,
It's gonna
dropping.
be insane with the Paragon legendary glyph we just talked about.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The earthquake train is leaving the station.
What I love about this is it doesn't just count your normal walking, right? If you're leaping, if you're charging, that's all counting towards like the distance that you're
For sure.
moving, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
whoa.
And
Yeah,
you
whoa,
can
cut
see
the
it
video.
here in like the whirlwind,
Oh.
for instance. Like it's obviously spawning earthquakes. So
Was that a druid petrify ultimate? This must be the wrong clip. All right, sorry guys. You know, we're doing it live. Let's just move on to the next one. Okay, so we have a necromancer here with the rune of ritual, cast a non-channeled core skill, getting 25 each. And then this is a classic from D2, gain +3 to all skills.
Bitte was?
So you'll get to see
+3 zu allen Skills.
5 skill ranks for Reap and Sever. And they're going to go out and cast this core
Casual.
skill.
Ist ja
socketable
genau
Harlequin
gleich gut.
Crest, pretty good.
Chaco is
So a little
outdated.
pew pew, just doing your basic core skill usage, filling up the offering needed.
Yeah, I really like the little tracking buff that fills up as you.
Seht ihr das
as you're getting it. So you don't
Paragon-Level
need to really
drunter?
micromanage this. You can just at a glance see that, hey, I just filled it up, and
Yeah.
now I get +3 ranks of Sever.
Yep, so now you're at +3.
Das ist eigentlich hier unten 39 Paragon-Level. Das ist eigentlich der Shit.
Oh, what? Is this another broken clip? Did they just cast teleport? What? Okay, I think you guys
Teleporting
you got it right.
necros. What are you cooking over there, Jeevan?
Yeah, I'll stop making jokes mostly. Yeah, so what we really wanted to lean into with D2 Runewords, among other things, was the ability to cast other classes' skills and use their power and harness it into your build. So with Runewords, you're going to get to do that. Each class is going to share 2 skills and 1 legendary aspect, like the Earthquake one that you saw.
Wie ist das mit dem Offering gemeint?
Cast Improve
Das heißt, wenn ich Gegner töte oder wenn ich farme, kriege ich so Offering und erst dann kann ich es einsetzen?
Necromancer, you get to cast Horrid Decrepify, which is the upgraded version. And that's we did that for a lot of reasons. You know, we wanted to make some of them feel a little better and a little more powerful. And a lot of it is about balance. But one important thing that I always want to highlight here is that you always cast the best version of the skill if you have upgrades as the sort of home owner of the class, right? So what that means is, let's say you're a Spiritborn and you equip the Cry rune, which is the Vortex spell. If you have points into the upgrade, then you'll cast the upgraded Vortex when the rune goes off. So I don't think there'll be any class envy. You know, like everyone will get the best version of their own skills, and then they'll get to use other classes' skills. And we're really excited to see how people can construct new builds and new archetypes and what they can do with using the power of the classes.
And that says enhanced war cry, so that means necros can become berserk, right?
That indeed does mean that, and that enhanced war cry is a winner. I gotta say, that one's real strong. We've already seen people just chopping up the pit with that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Really looking forward to what kind of interesting new combinations and builds you can come up with by dipping into other class skills in unique ways. It really just like multiplies the possibilities of what you can do with any given class.
Yeah, exactly. And not only do we want you to augment your builds with other classes' skills, but you know, runes will scale with gear. So when you get more interesting runes of rituals, you'll find ways to optimize them as well and get more output. So we really feel like people will have a lot of theory crafting that they can build off of the Runeword system. And I'm very excited to see how you break the game. By the way, that's what she's doing on PTR for me. Just break the game. See every build you can find that totally destroys everything.
An dieser Stelle viel Spaß beim Balancing.
3 of the same rune, you can use them to roll a new rune. You go to the jeweler, or it might not be the jeweler, but we'll see. And you will combine 3 of the same exact rune, and you'll get a new rune out that is guaranteed to be different than the rune you put in. And there's a chance to uproll it to the next highest rarity. So if you put 3 magic runes in, there's a chance that it'll be a rare rune. Same with rare. There's a chance that it'll be a legendary rune. And then on top of that, we'll have the ability to craft mythic uniques. So you can use runes. Each mythic unique can be crafted with a specific set of runes. You'll need a legendary, rare, and magic runes of a certain quantity, and 1 resplendent spark. And this is in addition to the existing mythic unique crafting flow. So
I was just going to say, this really harkens back to the sort of crafting that was so core in D2, with the runes of being able to match 3 and get the next upgrade, but in a way that's a little bit more flexible and gives you more progression out of it. And this is all tradable, right? So that match 3, those crafting mythic uniques, what do you think that's going to do with trading?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to really build a sort of player community around how to acquire the runes you need, whether it's because you want to combine, you have 2 and you want to find that 3rd one to combine for a new one, or you're hunting for a specific mythic unique. I think we're going to have a lot of player interaction, and, well, someone's going to win the capitalism game there, so we'll see how that goes.
I really like how the rune crafting system makes it so you're kind of always progressing, right? If you're getting rune drops, then you're getting materials that can use to progress towards higher rarity runes and potentially towards these mythic unique items. Unlike some of the other loot drops, if you don't find a good piece of gear, it just ends up being salvage. Here with runes, you're kind of constantly getting some of that progression, even if it's not always the perfect rune right now.
Yeah, I think that's something that when we did talk to a lot of sort of
Aktionshaus wollen sie leider keins machen.
We built Runenwords, and one of the things that most of them tend to mention.
Das wollen sie leider nicht. Also für alle, die später reinziehen, der Talk läuft jetzt schon fast 2 Stunden. Hier gibt es eine Zusammenfassung der letzten 2 Stunden auf Deutsch. 2 Stunden. Und Runen war das letzte, aber in einer abgeschwächten Version.
About a lot of stuff today. We had progression, itemization, we talked about quality of life, we talked about class changes, and of course the newest thing, which is Runenwords, which will be in Vessel of Hatred. But the one thing we did want to quickly talk about was PTR. PTR is coming up. And we want to give a little bit, or at least some specifics on what that PTR test is going to be, and also hear from the team on exactly like what they're looking for from you guys out there that are playing, like for feedback as you guys play through the systems. Everything that we've actually talked about today is going to be present in this PTR. So all the class balance changes, the progression changes, Runenwords will also be part of the PTR. So we actually do want players jumping in and checking it out. So let's jump right into some of the PTR items. So as everyone knows, PTR from even the last PTR that we had will carry over content from your main account. So if you've already done all your Renown, cleared your Fog of War, your Altar of Lilith status will carry over onto your PTR account. We did do a character copy as well. It was a while back though. So you may find that it might be a little dated from like the character copy that you have on live, but that will exist for players to actually use. One thing I will note is that we are planning on having 2 different testing phases for PTR specifically. The first testing phase will actually begin next Wednesday and will run through Friday, about midday, where we're going to actually give players the opportunity of kind of just starting characters from fresh, because we really need people to try out the new progression systems that Colin and Aislinn were talking about specifically in the beginning of the stream. So Wednesday through midday Friday, we really need players to jump in, check that out, give us feedback specifically regarding anything tied to the new progression systems. Around midday on Friday, though, we will be turning on the rest of the PTR, which will include things like Runenwords and all the other features that we were kind of talking about. All the other features will be part of it, but Runenwords and things like that will be turning in on Friday. One thing that we've heard from feedback from players specifically, especially as we have addressed this in the past, is that there is going to be a boost vendor available for this PTR. So in Kiyovushad, players will be able to go and visit this specific vendor. This is the best video that I was talking about because this Fallen is dancing and it looks absolutely amazing. This vendor will be available and you'll be able to interact with it. And this vendor will actually then be able to provide you a ton of enhancements to your character, which we do have a list of here. So you will be able to boost your character up to level 50. Level 60, of course, which is the new level cap after Vessel of Hatred actually ships. We will end up clearing out your whole map, your waypoints, Fog of War. We will do your class mechanic stuff and have that already unlocked. All Torment tiers will be unlocked. Your potions will be upgraded completely. And then I know, based off of feedback that we got from like the last PTR, was hey, it'd be great if we could generate like legendary items, if we can get all the unique items, all the runes, or well, that's new now, but all the runes and everything like that, including masterworking materials, that will actually be available in this vendor. So this is a way for players to be more efficient while testing and being able to give us more feedback, especially around endgame related items. So we really need players to jump in for PTR. One last caveat I do want to mention is Infernal Hordes will not be available in this specific PTR. We are still doing some work on that right now before we actually get it ready.
Infernal Hordes?
All the other features within the game will be available. Infernal Hordes, as I mentioned, will be, it's a permanent feature, so it's coming back to the game no matter what. And then separately, I do want to remind everyone that PTR right now it is still just PC BattleNet only. This does give us the flexibility of being able to upload, change things on the fly, like things like turning Runewords on Friday, for instance, is gives us we have the flexibility of being able to do that on our own platform. So it's just easier for us to be able to have that additional work.
Also ich glaube, dass am PTR jeder spielen kann, egal ob du das Add-on gekauft hast oder nicht, weil das nicht gemessen wird und am PTR alles gelöscht wird. Ich glaube nicht, dass das ein Add-on-Check macht. Meine Meinung wird gelöscht, BO ist Schmutz, da muss deine Meinung auch gelöscht werden.
Focus in on and provide feedback on as they go into the test.
Yeah, so I think we really want to see people focusing on the new journey. So starting from level 1 and feeling out what difficulty tier is right for you. And if that feels like
der Level-Part mit den neuen Schwierigkeitsgraden, das könnte echt spannend werden. Ich meine, ist halt dann wie in Diablo 3, ne? Ist vor allem spannend für Hardcore, weil dann kannst du mal wirklich hoch reinleveln.
Out and you're like I'm going to make my character a blaster even though they're only level 30. Like, how far can you go with that? And are you going as far as you expected you would be able to go?
Yeah, those are great points. It really is about, are we hitting that expectation that we've sort of created, right? Which is, we really loved how the Mind Cage was functioning. We loved how tormented bosses felt in terms of having hard mode versions of things. Are these difficulty tiers sort of meeting those expectations of all the things that we have had in the previous game now mapped to a more streamlined system that should be much, much easier to navigate?
Awesome. And I know on the class side, like Charles, what are you kind of looking for? What's the team looking for on that front?
Yeah, I think we're really looking at the new skills and the new key passives for each class and how they're usable at all points in your character journey, right? They should feel good to press when you just first learn these new skills. But they should also feel really good when you're in the late game and you're trying to, make a build all around them, right? Around your stone burst. Like, does it feel like that has enough support and that you can, make a stone burst build or Dance of Knives and or all the other different skills? Like, do they fit in? What's their appropriate power level? And we really want to make sure that the new skills and the new key passives enable new ways of playing our classes and that they feel satisfying to build that way.
Awesome. And Jeevan, I know you mentioned to everyone, break the game with Runenwörter. So is there maybe any more extra items you're looking for in terms of feedback?
Bin mal gespannt, wie stark die Runenwörter werden.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely mostly about
damit die
that. I want to see what
reinfitten.
people come up with. I want to see, what you can cook in terms of builds. You can do something fun or cool or unexpected. And also, I'm highly interested in the sort of balanced feedback. I think we'll get it from all of you, but we've had a lot
Weil
of
wenn die
people
Runen
who are
nämlich zu
very hard
stark
on
sind, dann nutzt du
conceptualizing
ja
and make
keine
sure the
Uniques
stuff is
mehr.
right on the edge of broken without actually being broken. And
Oder
you get to prove
beziehungsweise
me wrong if that
zwei.
is the case.
Achso, nee, die klauen ja keinen Slot.
Awesome. Well, I know
Ist
we
egal.
do want to jump into a little bit of Q&A before we kind of wrap up. I know we've been here for a little while, so we'll
Ist es so, die Runen werden ja reingesockelt, das heißt, du verlierst ja keinen Item-Slot. Das heißt also, die Runen müssen sich nur gegen normale Edelsteine behaupten. Das heißt also, jeder wird mit den 2 möglichen Runen rumlaufen, mit den 2 bestmöglichen, die er haben kann und fertig. Das heißt also, du könntest theoretisch gesehen eine Tyriels Macht looten. Eine Tyriels Macht hat 2 Sockel und da haust du ein Runenwort rein. Ja, dann ist das ja eine Gmate Wiesen, dann ist das ja nur ein kleiner Power Gain im Verhältnis, weil du verlierst ja kein Item, du musst dich ja da nicht entscheiden. Okay.
And it is in the works specifically from that end. So,
ja, aber auf das Leben verlieren.
I know we have questions from Twitch chat, so this is where I actually like butcher everyone's name. So in standard fashion, I will continue to do that. It's just a little different now because I actually like have a screen in front of me, which is actually really.
Für alle, die es vielleicht mit der Rüstkammer nicht gecheckt haben.
Start off with a question regarding the different difficulty tiers. So this is from Double DHZ, which is since we now have 8 difficulties, does this mean with power increase in later seasons, more difficulties will be added? Are we planning on adding like 20 difficulties like in Diablo 3? Like what's the plans around that?
Yeah, we want to be really measured in terms of when we add difficulty tiers. I think it sets us up for adding them when we feel like it's an appropriate time. We don't want to get to a spot where we have 20 different difficulty tiers. We want to have just enough granularity to support the amount of power that we're adding. And what we don't want to do is sort of say, okay, we're going to add things like rune words or add things like seasonal powers and then nerf.
Ich glaube, weil ich gesehen habe, du kannst Runen in den Schmuck sockeln, bringt dir ja nichts, weil du brauchst ja 2 Sockel pro Item. Das heißt also, du in den Schmuck hast du ja nur einen Sockel, da kriegst du kein Runenwort aktiv.
I don't want to continue to sort of nerf players into a spot where they can sort of use all this new power to push. A great example of that is previously in seasons, we would actually increase monster health to compensate for some of the seasonal powers.
Brust, Beine, Waffe.
Now, if you get seasonal powers, if you're blasting Penitent and leveling to 60 faster, good for you. Like that's something that we think is actually really important to the system.
Hose, Helm, Brust und Zweihandwaffe. Der Barb hat 2 Zweihandwaffen.
I know. Next question that we have. This is a question I've seen a decent amount. This is from Explosive Cat. Hopefully your cat is not exploding. What's the purpose of Nightmare Dungeons now that glyphs have moved out of Pit?
Yeah, so Nightmare Dungeons are going to be where you receive your masterworking materials. And because Nightmare Dungeons are going to be following the difficulty tier system now, you're going to be able to go into higher torment tiers, or rather higher difficulty tier Nightmare Dungeons, and get more masterworking materials out of that. So just like, all other kinds of content in the game now, being able to go into a higher difficulty of that activity is going to ultimately be better for you.
Yeah, the grind, sort of putting a grind currency actually fits much better in a Nightmare Dungeon compared to the Pit, because it means that every sort of elite you kill, every chest you open, or every corner you go into and you find an elite pack, those are going to be masterworking materials, as opposed to today where it's like, well, the instant I make a turn that is not in the direction of finishing this dungeon has been a waste of my time because I want that glyph. That completely changes when everything in the dungeon is dropping masterworking materials, and we think that feels so much better for that type of content. Conversely, with the Pit, again, we're going to reward you for pushing difficulty, and we do want you to sort of get there quickly and get that reward and get
Elite
out.
und Kisten geben jetzt Events, ja, aber wie viel, ne?
Yeah, so just for people, because I think when they immediately heard like, well, now it's just moved to Nightmare Dungeons and it's just at the end, it's actually part of the whole Nightmare Dungeon. It's not just the end goal, getting to the end and getting masterworking materials there. Just want to clarify for chat, because I know immediately
there's a good amount at the end when you kill the boss, right? Of course the boss has to have good shit, but like what's really gonna feel great is like when you run into a massive elite pack, like you just randomly run into, we spawned maybe too many. Those are all gonna represent, little loot bags of masterworking materials, which is gonna be huge.
Awesome. This question is from RXU105. Are runes reusable?
Oh, gute Frage, gute Frage.
So, by the way, I just want to say, chat, I've been reading Twitch chat, and what you've said has struck a chord. Anyway, yes, they will be reusable.
Can't take you anywhere.
You can unsocket runes and you can move them into different items.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. I saw a few related questions to that. They don't get to exist in the same item as gems. You do have to pick between gems and runes on any individual item.
Ja, das ist also okay. Weil sonst wäre
Awesome.
beides
I know there was a question related to
Kündigung geht raus.
another.
Ja.
Well, at least I don't know if Charles, you want to answer this, or if you have additional details. There's a lot of questions related to one of the mythic uniques, and it's additive damage to demons and angels specifically. I don't know if you want to talk about
I will
that.
confirm that is the wording on the effect. Plus damage to angels and demons.
There you go, guys. We'll just leave it at that. And
no further comment.
I know, no further comment on that. Additional question that we have related to Paragon is, why cap the amount of boards instead of just capping maybe the amount of glyphs we can use? This is from Hotner.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Something that I think we can take back and really think about. We had discussed, and we felt like the cleanest solution from just sort of the flow perspective was that we wanted to just make it really sort of compact and make those choices about which glyphs and which legendary nodes and eventually what rare and magic nodes matter to you. But that's really good feedback and something we can continue to monitor as we go into PTR and as people get their hands on it. Again, it's really about making those boards more punchy, and the connections between those boards is something that you navigate during your journey. But the sort of end point is about making those really chunky choices on what glyphs you want and what legendary nodes you want. And we think that ultimately, especially now that Paragon is realm-wide and all your alts, I think we touched on that earlier, all your alts get to benefit from this. It's really going to streamline that process of getting your points locked in quickly on those alt characters and get them into the end game really quickly. But that's a really good point of feedback.
A question from WTF, Akalaka. I don't know. See, this is bad. Yeah, you get the point. Well, everyone need to be in Kyovashad to change difficulty like it is currently.
Oh, das ist eine gute Frage.
That's a good question. We've added, actually, so you could imagine how obnoxious it would be to do the pit in Karagar and then have to go to Kyovashad to then unlock the new Torment tier that you just got. So we actually added difficulty tier selectors in Karagar as well as Kyovashad, in addition to Kyovashad. And then we also have one in Kurast, and there's also another one, I think, near the Dark Citadel entrance.
Also jetzt muss man immer rüber und raus. Was wurde zu den Demon und Angel gesagt? Gar nichts. Er confirmed nur, dass es oben steht. Es wurde nicht speziell gesagt, wie das gemeint ist oder sonstiges. Also da gab es jetzt keinen Leak, da habt ihr nichts verpasst.
Glyphs kind of shared between all characters in the realm,
Einfach
or
gar
do they
nichts.
have to be leveled up separately?
So those are still leveled up separately, but that's something like going forward, we definitely want to emphasis on like making alts more seamless to play into. And we definitely, there's some underlying feedback there, which is, wouldn't it be great if the Paragon glyphs were account wide? And it's like, yeah, that's something we can take back to the team. And philosophically, we really want to start moving towards a direction where making alts is really easy to get into. And
Ich hätte auch
powerful.
gesagt, ja.
So that's something we can definitely take note of.
And I'll also highlight that, right, because the Paragon points are shared account wide or realm wide, as it were. If you make a new character, you're going to get a ton of Paragon points right away, which increases your power level, which maybe means you take on a higher pit tier, and then you get the catch-up mechanic on leveling up those glyphs. So it is a little bit easier for your alts to level up those glyphs as well, even if it's not 100% shared.
Yeah, that's very true. You can level them up really fast in the pit if you're pushing deep.
There is a question regarding Eternal Realm characters, like, what happens to them when 2.0 kind of launches? What's the, I'm assuming because they already have like 925 gear, if they're at max level, they'll be brought down to that new eye level that we had mentioned. Is there like any specific changes or anything, or is it kind of laid out exactly kind of how we presented?
Oh, I can
Go
answer
for
this.
it, Colin. Yeah.
Yeah. We are doing some adjustments for those Eternal players who really like to play the game on one character. We
So,
wanted to
schauen wir
make
mal.
sure that there was new loot to chase. We also just needed to make sure that with the new character level adjustments, we sort of had to adjust the eye power of items now that the fact that the max character level is 60. In addition to our goals of really sort of creating more grounded numbers, it does mean level 50 is getting an eye power
Ich
adjustment,
glaube, es
as
wird
well
noch
as
ein
the affixes
Campfire
are being
geben.
adjusted.
Ja.
But we are going to max roll every single affix that we adjusted power-wise. So, for example, if you get a 5, we're going to take those items and adjust them. We aren't going to re-roll those affix bands. Like if you had perfect affixes, we're just going to essentially max roll all of them within that band. So
Das
there's no
mit der
feels
Bit
bad
wurde
about,
letzte
I
Season
had
schon
this perfect item
zurückgenommen.
and you ruined it by readjusting it. But the sort of main takeaway there is we wanted to make sure in patch 2.0 that there was new loot to chase.
Also es kriegt jeder das
We
Gleiche.
wanted to make sure that the new uniques had a place to sing. And that's all sort of in service to that, for that type of Eternal player who really likes that sort of long form progression.
Awesome. Question from Ice Panther. Rune words, are they applicable to all items and weapons? Or are they restricted to specific types of equipment? Additionally, can gems be inserted into equipment with runes?
Yeah, they can be inserted into all types of equipment, so they're not restricted from being in uniques as long as you have 2 sockets for that unique. And the to restate the slots that are available with 2 sockets, on base game it's 3. It's chest, pants, and 2-hander. We're also adding a second socket to helm, so you'll have 4 slots. And you cannot mix runes with gems in any item. And
Ja,
you
okay, das
wouldn't
macht...
want to.
Ja,
You'd
okay.
basically be losing the benefit of them.
Das würde sonst ganz viel machen.
Awesome. I know we have some questions related to like some co-op bugs. I will say that I've gone on, I know, like forums and Reddit and at least addressed them, that we are working on them. I can tell you the team is most definitely working on them right now. Excuse me as I cough. Still getting over my sickness. And then I know this is actually I'm going to ask this because it's a funny question. Are there runes for G and then Vun?
Oh, I mean, my narcissism certainly would have let me do that, but I think we can't do that sort of stuff. Unfortunately, I would have loved to. But I will say, there are, the runes have these sort of phrases that they unlock when you actually compose the spells. And we have some, I think, fun references and Easter eggs to, the great Diablo games of the past. And so hopefully that'll...
Okay, jetzt habe ich es gecheckt. Kam mir nicht an. Der kam bei mir nicht an. Der war zu hoch für mich.
Runes, are they stackable?
Yeah, they are stackable, and we have added a new tab for them as well. We have a socketable tab. So all your runes and gems will go there. So
there we go.
Would be pretty good for your inventory.
Yeah, that would have been really messing with inventory if runes did not stack, and now that they have their own tab. Yeah, and now they have their own tab, which is really, really good.
Okay,
so,
okay.
Cool. I know we are very over on time. So I do want to make sure that we let everyone go here so that they can eat, because we've now gone well past lunch over here in California. Just a reminder for everyone that PTR is actually going to be starting next Wednesday. We will have patch notes and the blog up immediately after the stream, specifically here, so you guys can check it out. Check out the patch notes. It's 17,000 words, a lot of words, so I apologize. I will say that for other locales, it might be until like early next week before
17?
those patch notes will be available. It just takes a while for us to localize on some of those, and it kind of came in a little hot. So we do plan on actually having that available in all languages. Just for now, they will be English only, and immediately up after this specific stream. Again, PTR starts next Wednesday. We'll have 2 different phases. Wednesday through Friday will be that first initial phase where we need players jumping in, checking out the progression changes and testing all that out. And then starting on Friday for the rest of the week specifically, we'll end up having the boost vendor available where players can actually jump in and test out everything that they need to.
So, also für die ein bisschen später reinsehen und nicht 17.000 Wörter, hier gibt es eine Zusammenfassung von vorhin. Also Schauen wir mal, für alle anderen, damit es kurz und knapp geht, Diablo 4 wird zu Diablo 3. Ich habe den 2,5 Stunden Campfire-Chat zusammengefasst. Schwierigkeitsgrade gleich wie in Diablo 3, Loot-System gleich wie in Diablo 3, Glypensystem gleich wie in Diablo 3, das mit dem Socket. Und das Einzige, was wirklich noch neu um die Ecke kam, war dann das Runensystem am Ende und dass jede Klasse eine neue Fähigkeit kriegt. Wobei man dazu sagen muss, dass die geilste Fähigkeit wahrscheinlich der Druide bekommt.
That more here
Danke, Jesse.
As we head towards launch. So there is still a seasonal theme and mechanic with Season 6 that we'll be sharing here soon. So thank you guys, everyone, and thank you, Diablo community, for tuning in. Check out Diablo4.com.
Und 1000 Euro gespart.
And we'll see you guys in Sanctuary. Thanks again.
So, meine Damen und Herren, auf einer Skala von 1 bis 10. 10 ist Maximum Hype. Wo stehen wir denn? Wie fühlt ihr denn Diablo 3? Wie fühlt ihr denn Diablo 3? Also mir ist natürlich vollkommen klar, dass dieser Diablo 3 Twist sehr viele Leute jetzt aktuell nicht abholen wird. Vor allem die sich jetzt gerade reingekämpft haben. Das ist halt heftig. Es gibt eine aktuelle Umfrage, da könnt ihr oben einfach draufklicken. Werdet ihr den BTR spielen? Schaut euch das an. Der BTR ist kostenlos für jeden, aber es wird halt alles wieder gelöscht. Also ich denke, ich sehe zwei Probleme. Das erste Problem ist, es wird so umgekrempelt, dass es sehr viele Bugs geben wird. Die werden sie nicht gebügelt kriegen, bis das Add-on kommt. Und danach, glaube ich, wird es richtig geil. Weil bei Diablo hat es auch funktioniert. Ich hätte mir ein bisschen mehr Innovation erwartet und so weiter, aber wenn du ehrlich bist, ja. Kennt ihr das, wenn ihr Wenn ihr in ein Lokal geht, ein 5-Gänge-Menü bestellt und am Ende seid ihr doch bei Mc's und kriegt Pommes und Burger? So wie die letzten 20 Jahre auch? Das ist die Zusammenfassung des Campfire-Chats. Ja? Ihr habt für 5 Gänge bezahlt, aber am Ende gibt es halt Burger und Pommes bei Mc's. Es ist leider traurig, aber da steckt leider sehr viel Wahrheit drin. Nee, lassen wir uns mal überraschen. Also ich bin mal gespannt. Ich hoffe, dass das Balancing von dem Schwierigkeitsgraden gut ist. Weil das wird, glaube ich, ich glaube, Klassenbalance kannst du wegschmeißen. Das geht sich nie mehr aus. Also eine Klassenbalance, das geht sich nicht mehr aus. Die Frage ist, ob sie die Feinabstimmung zwischen den Schwierigkeitsgraden und den Loot-Systemen kriegen. Weil wenn das nämlich dann so ist, dass wenn ich Torment 1 spiele und in Torment 1 droppt bei dem Überboss ein Item und bei Torment 5 droppt bei dem Überboss 87 Items, dann wird das auf jeden Fall wieder eine relativ klare und knappe Geschichte, ne? Also da dürfen wir uns mal überraschen lassen.